Championships to their hearts. And we are really set fair for a wonderful race today. Here's a look at the past winners of the Women's Elite Road Race Championships. Last year's winner, Emily Diderichsen, well, she's here again. She won in Doha. And Lizzie Armistead won the year before in Richmond. And here's a bit of a replay from a very, very different course down in Doha last year. Emily Diderichsen, a bit of a surprise winner. The young rider from Denmark biding her time, coming very, very late up the drag to the line. You can just see her in the centre of your screen. Lotte Lepisto on the right-hand side, and a win by the narrowest of margins to change her career forever. And she's really worn those World Championship bands with pride this year, riding for Bolsdormers. Kirsten Wild was in second place, of course. Well, joining me in the commentary box today is Jo Rauselschand, multiple Olympic champion. Jo, this is the course the riders are going to be facing today. You've already commentated on the junior women's race yesterday. What are your thoughts on what is in store?
It's definitely a tough course. I think it's a lot tougher than people first probably gave it credit for back when some course recce's were originally done. The climb of Salmon Hill is categorised as about 1.5k, but probably near a 5k uphill in total. Plus there's another climb on the course as well as technical sections. So definitely a tough day out for everybody today.
It certainly is. The speedboat there on your screen, who will have enough speed to take the rainbow bands today? But as you said, Jo, it's a very, very interesting circuit. Even the men have been looking at it. Alexander Kristoff looked at the course. He rode it earlier in the year. Wasn't too sure whether it suited his attributes. But I think that's what makes this course so interesting. It's a longer circuit than we're usually used to at a World Championships. They're normally around 16, 17 Ks. But 19 Ks with that climb in the middle, making it one, perhaps, that sprinters have an opportunity, also one that the climbers will fancy as well, also one for the puncheurs. And I think when you have a course as open as this, that's what makes for extremely exciting racing.
It does, and no one's quite sure how the race is going to pan out and quite what sort of riders is going to suit the most. So when you go through the favourites, there's quite a wide variety of riders that you can sort of highlight as potential winners today, and it all depends how the race pans out, how the riders race on this course, because obviously, you know, a hard course is a hard course, but it depends how hard the race is and, you know, how aggressive it is from the start. But I think the big difference with this World Championships compared to previous years is the length of the race. So total of nearly 153 kilometres, which is up until just this year, the UCI women's limit was 140 kilometres for a women's road race. That has now been increased to 160 kilometres. So across the board this year, women's road races have been getting longer. So this will be the longest ever women's World Championship road race.
Well, as you say, 8 laps of 19.1 kilometres, and we're just going through the roster of talent on display today. But there's a couple of out-and-out favourites, I think, for this race, although it's a very open race. The Dutch team in particular bring a mightily strong squad to Bergen.
They do. They've got 8 riders because they've got the European champion Marianne Vos. But you know a team is strong, but you probably don't even name Vos as your favourite rider.
I know, 3 times winner of this race, and,
yes.
And that's probably going to be a domestique.
Yeah, so probably the 2 favourites from that team, Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten. They were first and second in the time trial on Tuesday, with Annemiek van Vleuten taking the win there. Annemiek's had an incredible season. She won the course, which we saw back in July, as well as many other races. Anna van der Breggen, Women's Giro Rosa winner this year, among plenty of other wins, overall Women's World Tour winner as well. So those 2 riders probably you stand out on the whole field as riders to watch. But plenty of other nations need to take it to the Dutch, definitely.
No, definitely. I think you look at the Italians. Elisa Longo Borghini is here. A very talented rider. She's the Italian TT and road race champion. Lizzie Deignan, of course, is here. But Lizzie, the champion a couple of years ago in Richmond, has had her fair share of problems. Won the Grand Prix Plouet, which I had the pleasure of commentating on, a very dominant display there by her. But since then, sadly, she's had a few problems, but she is going to be here on the start line. But I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for her, perhaps.
Yeah, I think had Lizzie been completely healthy, you would have definitely highlighted this course as one for her to potentially win on. I know it had been a target for her all season, but she had surgery to have her appendix removed. 31st of August, I think the surgery was, so not long ago at all. Subsequently had to take 13 days off the bike to recover. And obviously, at that point, you know, your health, your recovery is by far more important than any bike races. But she is back on the bike now, and she knows she's not probably going to be how she was before that surgery. But let's hope that she's still better than a lot of people, you know, maybe 10% off her top, probably still going to be a very good performance. But I wouldn't want to put any unnecessary pressure on her. And for her, the victory is even being here. You know, she's going to represent Great Britain, do her best. Whether that's a team role or whether that's riding for herself remains to be seen, basically.
No, she's got a great team around her, a young team. Eleanor Barker, the sister duo of Alice Barnes and Hannah Barnes. Alice Barnes, of course, will be joining her sister Hannah over across at Canyon SRAM for next year. And then they've got, obviously, of course, Dignan, and then Danny King, one of the most experienced riders in the British squad. They've got Melissa Lowther and Hayley Simmons, who is more noted for her time trialling prowess, but I think she's going to be a very, very strong attribute for the team today. And then, of course, we have, I think we've got to talk a little bit about the American squad as well, in particular Corinne Rivera, the 25-year-old rider, normally rides for Sunweb. He's going to be in the Stars and Stripes today, but she has had a remarkable season. But do you think this course could be just a little bit too hilly for her?
Again, on paper, I probably would have said yes, but this year she's surprised so many people. She won Tour of Flanders this year, and she's won so many races where people have said probably not going to be the course for her, probably going to be too hilly. And she's really shown that she's not just a sprinter, and there's so much more to her than that. She's surprised a lot of people. But the American squad, similar to the Dutch squad, so many strong riders. Megan Garnier, Lauren Stevens, Katie Hall, Amber Nabin. All of those American riders as well. Very, very strong team there.
We just had a quick look at some of the French riders rolling to the line. And we could not mention that the French squad, as we look at a couple of the Danish riders just sat in the front there. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the enigma that is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the multiple world champion, of course. One of the only riders to hold all three disciplines at the same time, on the road, cyclocross and mountain biking. But this year, I was just looking back through the amount of road racing she's done as we just see the riders assembling in this beautiful sunshine here in Bergen. She's actually only done 8 road races this year, concentrating on training and, of course, mountain biking.
Yeah, she had some injuries last year and the year before. She's had, after the stellar season in 2014, quite a few setbacks. Didn't have the Rio Olympic Games that she wanted to have. But this year, she seems to have been getting better throughout the season. Second to Lizzie Dignan at GP Plouay at the end of August. And then a bronze medal at the Mountain Bike World Championships just a couple of weeks ago. She seems to have been timing her peak right for this race, and she's another rider that I've highlighted as a real potential winner today. It will be very interesting to see how she races this race.
It certainly will. It's smiles all round. That is Annemiek van Vleuten there. All smiles for her. We know why, because she's got a remarkably strong Dutch squad. That's Van der Breggen just behind. Of course, she's already been crowned, Van Vleuten, the world time trial champion. When you look back at Van Vleuten, what's happened to her over the last couple of years, particularly when you look back to Rio and that awful crash when in, well, arguably positioned to win the race. She's bounced back, and it was wonderful to see when she got confirmation that she'd won the time trial. She vaulted over the barriers and she went across to give her mum a hug, and that was a real cathartic moment for her. But clearly it means a lot to finally get those world bands.
Yeah, it just showed how much it meant to her and how emotional she was. This is a rider who's won so many big races but never been a world champion before. So for her to get those rainbow bands, incredibly special, and she will look forward to getting that white skin suit made up and racing all her subsequent time trials for the following 12 months in those stripes.
Yeah, something that you've got good experience of, wearing the world's bands, of course, on the velodrome. But only a few moments to go now before the start here. Again, absolutely beautiful, ideal conditions for road racing. Not too hot, not too cold. And as we know, Norway can actually throw some pretty awful weather conditions. Very northerly. That's why we just brought the date back for the World Championships by a couple of weeks. And absolutely huge crowds here. I think that's one thing we do need to mention. Every single event, the crowds have come out in their thousands, especially for the time trials, all the races. And wonderful to see as they're off, the crowds waving them on. The Danish team on the left-hand side, and the orange of the Netherlands just on the right. So a long race ahead of them, 152.8 kilometres, 8 laps of 19.1 kilometres. And finally, they're on their way. So in these early stages, Joe, of this sort of race, especially given the added distance, how do you think things are going to pan out? Because as we know, there can be, to a degree, a little bit of a formula to the World Championships, given it's on a circuit, and also given the challenge, the relatively challenging parkour here. It's going to be, for many, a bit of a voyage into the unknown distance-wise as well.
It is. I think with the challenging course, I think a lot of the sort of pre-race favourites will know that it will be an attritional race. There'll be riders going out the back of the bunch. on those climbs in the latter stages, and they know they need to bide their time. But
as we have a crash very early on in the race, that's never good to see. Going through this tunnel, remember, we're only about 500 metres from the finish line. It goes under the river and doubles back on itself. But a couple of riders already down there, one of them being Olena Polukina. A couple of the Russians there down as well. But very nervous times in the early stages of a World Championship. It always is the way. I've stood on the start line many times myself, and it can be the opening laps. It can take a little bit of time for things to settle down.
Definitely, you know, there's a big peloton here, and you know, there's a world title at stake. Everyone wants to be in the best position. Everyone wants to be able to save their energy early on, and it is a nervous time, and it will take, you know, once they've done a lap, everyone will know the course, and everyone will probably settle in a little bit more. But we saw some crashes yesterday in the rain, so thankfully it's dry today. But yeah, unfortunately, already a small crash in the opening stages.
Yeah, one of the local favourites said that was Stine Borgli of Norway. But didn't look like she was too injured, and unsurprisingly, Joe, pretty of a sedate pace. She still looks like she's got a few issues there. One of the French riders also just dropping back. But looking at the just the shape of the peloton there as they roll across the bridge, lovely clarity of light here. Hopefully all of those riders will get back in contact. And I think, as we can see here, Joe, the riders just taking this opportunity just to get maybe the first few laps under their belts, trying to conserve as much energy as possible, making sure they're eating and drinking, because we're going to be looking at well over 4 hours, maybe 4.25 hours for this race.
Yeah, that would be a long race. In previous years, this race has been more like around the 3.5 hour mark, obviously with shorter distances. So this is a big day out. There will be teams where they'll probably have riders, and they'll probably say to them, you know, the first couple of laps, this is your job to cover the moves, or this is your job to make the race hard. Whatever the sort of leader wants to see happen, they'll be saying, right, we want you to do this for the first 2 laps. So there'll be a few team orders. People will be knowing what they want to do early on. Other riders will be looking just to save energy, because it is a long race. The smarter you can be, the more efficiently you can ride, the more you can follow the wheels, not put yourself in the wind early on. That is going to really pay off in the latter stages.
It certainly is. Conservation of effort, absolutely vital. We're going to take, in the early stage of this race, our first commercial break as the riders ease themselves in. So go and make yourselves a brew and come back very shortly. Welcome back. Early in lap 1 of the Elite Women's World Road Race Championships. Quite a colourful start. We had that little crash just under the tunnel, but I think it is all back together. And this is one of the small climbs that that punctuate this course. We're just going through now Solheim. And again, I think this is, and the feed zone, this is one of the climbs, Joe, that you almost kind of forget about. When you look at the profile, it clearly is marked definitively by the climb of Salmon Hill, which we think will shape the race. But also what we can't forget is the other smaller climbs on the circuit, providing opportunities, of course, for riders to attack, but also for riders to get fatigued on as well.
Definitely. So in the junior girls race, we talked a lot about Salmon Hill, not really so much about this climb, but there were attacks going on this climb. There's also the feed zone going over the top. We did see one rider attack just coming out of that feed zone one lap. So you will see action here as well, and it will all add to the fatigue in the riders' legs as these laps go on. It's not a case of 19k with one hill. It's 19k with quite a bit of climbing in there, and not much respite.
You can just see it, one of the riders is drifting back. This Ingrid Moe of Norway. Looks like she's just having a few problems engaging her front mech there. The rider's dropping down onto the small ring for that climb. Again, as we talked about only a few moments ago, conserving energy, especially in these longer races, in particular in the World Road Championship, so important. It's a very unique event in terms of, you do see attacks going off the front, but generally speaking, the speed, the pressure is generally ratcheted up sort of lap by lap, and we see riders generally going out of the rear of the bunch than off the front. But it's, again, this particular course, as well as the climbs, it's very technical. We saw quite a few crashes, didn't we, over the last couple of days, especially in the wet conditions. But as we can see, there's plenty of pinch points. The road doubles back on itself. So I think this sort of course does add so much variety and excitement. But riders are going to have to really concentrate it for as long as they can.
They are. Section of cobbles as well towards the end. After the last climb, it's about 9k into the finish. So descent, reasonably technical, then a lot of twists and turns. into the town, into the finish line, which can also help if you're away. It's difficult to chase, you know, out of sight, out of mind. So we've seen in both the junior races a rider escape with 30k to go and 25k to go, I think. So both times a solo breakaway, a rider's gone, and if they've got out of sight on this sort of course, it does make it harder for the chasers.
It certainly does. Now this is the foot of Salmon Hill. Now Salmon Hill itself on the parkour, on the road book, is only listed as 1.5 kilometres in length, an average gradient of 6.4, pitches up at its maximum at just under 8%. But the climb itself is longer than that. There's like this essentially is the part of the climb. There's a bit of a plateau in the middle, but it's certainly a longer climb than 1.5 Ks.
Definitely. So I reckon perhaps up to nearly 5k of climbing, you know, when they turn off the main road and they're gradually going uphill for quite a while. This isn't even part of the climb proper at the moment. So it's a fairly significant climb, and again, I think it's one that perhaps not everyone has realised quite how tough it was going to be. But all these girls will have watched the race in the last couple of days. They will have been probably watching from TV rather than out on the road yesterday, given the weather. But, you know, following what their teammates were doing in the junior categories, looking at how the race unfolds as well. And I think watching the junior women's race yesterday, it took a lot of people by surprise quite how hard the course was. And the race was ridden hard from the off yesterday. And the race was split to bits by the last lap. And it was a brilliant race to watch. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. But, yeah, it will catch a lot of people out.
Well, there's a few people being caught out already. That was Justina Jovaisti of Lithuania, already losing contact at the back of this group, as is number 145 there. That's Ling Serene Lee of Singapore, but having no such difficulty, just getting back into the group. That's Jessie Dreutz of Belgium. Belgium only bring a 4-woman team. Julien Duhor are arguably one of the favourites. If I can use the word, it's a bit controversial when I use this word, but the winningest rider in the women's peloton with 12 wins, Julien Duhor, but perhaps a course that may be just a little bit too hard for her, because she is an out-and-out sprinter, one of the most powerfully built and fastest riders in the field.
She's had an incredible season, so she focused a bit more on 2016 on the track, but focused very much on the road this season. And she has been riding incredibly well. I do think perhaps maybe a bit too hilly for her this course, but it depends how the race is ridden, and it depends how she rides, you know, how much she conserves her energy, and we'll see who can hang on those latter stages. But I do think I probably wouldn't line her up as one of the favourites. They haven't doing any injustice to her there, but probably looking more towards a more climber-based rider today.
Well, there we go, Ingrid Moet. Just dropping back, clearly had a problem with her gear. And again, you just saw the rider there, just holding onto the side of the car. They are allowed to do this. She clearly has an issue. It looks like she is running electronic gears on that bike, but not working. So what she's going to do is drop back, have a word with the mechanic, who's going to have a look to see if he can try and fix the gears. And it's always a little bit of a dangerous game when you're holding onto the side of the car, but these riders are professional, and there he is. Now, I know there's been a little bit of controversy about this, particularly in the men's peloton, is the dangers of mechanics leaning out of the window and tending to the riders' gears on the move. I think there are moves afoot to try and ensure that riders are actually moved to the side of the road, not just from a safety perspective, because, of course, we have this sticky spanner or the sticky bottle syndrome that quite often we see in the peloton.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always just had complete trust in the mechanic, and I've just trusted they know what they're doing. And I've always thought I don't particularly fancy that job myself, but yeah, whenever I've done these sort of races and had, you know, a mechanic hanging out the window, I've always thought, you know, fair play to them. They know what they're doing. I'll let them carry on with that. But when you look at it like that, it is actually quite a scary position to be in, because they're not going particularly slowly either. No,
it does look a little bit sketchy. And throw into the mix a few sleeping policemen that pepper this course as well. So it has its climbs, descents, corners, and here we are for the very first time in this championships. We're on the foot slopes of Salmon Hill. And already it looks like a couple of riders. It looks like that is, in fact, from Great Britain. That is the time trial experience. Yeah, Hayley Simmons. So she is very, very strong. And also had a big win on the road earlier this year as well.
Yeah, she's had a fantastic season, so probably better known for her time trialling. Multiple national champion in the UK at the CTT races, as well as the British Cycling Championships over the years. But yeah, had a win out in Germany earlier in the year at the Lotto Thüringen Tour, and right with the Team WNT. It will be interesting to see what she's doing here. So perhaps the tactic might be to try and make the race hard, try and whittle that bunch down, and we can already see her getting on the front, putting the power down. If they turn us back around to show her.
Well, there we go. Great crowds on the climb of Salmon Hill. So Hayley Simmons clearly just by looking at the way she rode quite purposefully to the front of the group. Her job is to set a rhythm, and I know if Lizzie Deignan is going to perform in this race, she won't want it to be too easy. We talked about her problems with having her appendix out, 10 days bed rest, 13 days off the bike. But significantly, apparently, according to an interview, she lost 2 kilograms in muscle. And when you consider how slim and how slight Lizzie Deignan is built, that could be a massive factor. But if she can use her teammates to gradually wear the field down, try and take a little bit of the sting out of the more punchier riders' legs, that could be a good tactic, because Lizzie, she just likes it hard.
Definitely, she does like it hard. For her, normally the harder the race, the better. She loves a good hard race, and she'd love to have a team of riders and tell them to all make the race hard. But for her here today, she needs to see how she feels the first few laps. She needs to look after herself, ride smartly, which she knows how to do. She's a professional. She's one of the best in the world at this. She does this every day. She knows how to look after herself, so she does love going on the attack, but today it's going to be more about looking after herself and just being realistic and really not putting pressure on herself. See how she feels lap by lap and letting the other GB girls do their thing, which they seem to be doing, and we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, they're certainly putting a few riders in difficulty already on the first ascent of Salmon Hill. So some of the riders who quite clearly haven't got the same race programs as many. It's great to see so many riders in the field. 153 riders today took the start line from many different nations, but already several of these riders in difficulty. And I think that's going to be an illustration of certainly as what's to come, as we see some Norwegian flags and a polar bear, I guess, at the top of that house there.
That's pretty cool. First time I've seen a polar bear at a bike race. I'm impressed with that. Someone's put some effort into that costume there.
Well, we've had pandas in the past and now polar bears in Norway. I'm expecting a giant salmon a little bit later on. But just looking at that Italian flag on the right-hand side, we've talked a little bit about the weather conditions today. It's going to get up to around 17 or 18 degrees, so not too chilly. But once the riders have crested this climb, they'll pick up a tailwind, but it's a tailwind for the majority of the climb of Salmon Hill. Then they swing left over the top, back into the headwind. And then they'll have the wind in the back all the way to the turning point on the course. That's up at Sandviken. And then the last 4 Ks of the running to the line, the riders will face a headwind, and that's the way it's been over the last couple of days. But significant, that's what makes it difficult for riders away on their own. But also, you generally get a little bit of brinkmanship in the bunch with that sort of unwillingness to chase when chasing into a headwind.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing today as well in the World Championships, these girls don't race together all year round. They race together just a couple of times per year. European Championships were back in August, but in general they're running for their trade teams, so they're not actually working together as these sort of teams. But a lot of nations do invest on having training camps together, spending time together as a group and working on running together as a team, as a national team. So I think that will really show in this race as well, which teams are really buying into working towards one rider and which teams have riders with individual agendas. And I think we'll see that as the race continues. We've already talked about how strong the Dutch team are, how strong the American team are, Italians. There's so many strong teams here, and it would be interesting which ones really put everything on the line for the one rider.
No, definitely. Of course, every team will have had meetings throughout the week. They'll have assessed the riders' forms, and generally coming into this road race week, there would have been an assigned leader. But that can, of course, change out on the road. In a race this long, things can change. You could have the protected rider feeling good at the start. Halfway through, she finds she hasn't got the legs, so it's so important to communicate with your teammates out on the road. And when you have more teammates to communicate with and to change the plan, that's so valuable, because of course we've got some key riders here. Lotte Lepisto of Finland, of course, medalist last year. She's only got one teammate, so having a big team around you with options, absolutely crucial, because things can change on the road.
Definitely, and that's the thing as an athlete, you can do all the perfect preparation, everything can be exactly how you wanted it, but on the day you just have bad legs. There are other times when you don't do the perfect preparation and you think you're going to have a bad day, but perhaps you're more relaxed today and perhaps everything just falls into place and you actually feel really good. And it is, with all the best sports science in the world, sometimes you just have a randomly bad day or a randomly good day, and it's hard to explain that. So it's about recognising that, knowing your own feelings, recognising your own sensations in your legs early on. These riders will be very fine-tuned to knowing how they feel, and the tiniest little change that they'll think to themselves, well, this is going to be a good day or going to be a bad day. And I think it's about recognising those things, communicating with your teammates, and if necessary, changing the tactics as the race develops.
It certainly is. We just got a glimpse there. There's clearly some cameras on board several of these riders. We got a glimpse just a few moments ago of Katarzyna Niewiadoma of Poland. rides normally for the WM3 team. She's the winner of the Women's Tour, 22 years of age, and I think she has to be one of the favourites today. Not an out-and-out sprinter, but a rider that will love this sort of punchy, hilly terrain, and a rider that can also win alone as well. So watch out for Niewiadoma in the white and the red of Poland. You can see Hayley Simmons still at the front, and the Norwegian team as well riding. Simmons having a quick look round, but you can just tell here she's pretty happy. I'd imagine she'll be able to sit on the front for at least 2 or 3 laps and just keep that smooth rhythm going.
Yeah, this is a good job for Hayley here. You know, like we said, she's a very strong time trialist, so she will be able to set a tempo and maintain that. Looks like she's getting some help from the Norwegian girls as well, but it seems her agenda here is to set a tempo. Look at this bunch all strung out here, all these riders not bunched up at all. Nice long string, and that's all thanks to a lot of it thanks to Hayley and the Norwegian girl she's riding with as well. They've strung this bunch completely out, which will be, a lot of the favourites will be glad about this. There'll be riders thinking we want this to be a good hard race. There'll be other riders thinking, oh God, there's only lap 1 and we're already struggling.
Indeed. Well, there's the crowd waiting anxiously on the line. We estimate that the riders should be coming through and around between 25 and 30 minutes, probably near, I think, on this lap, nearly 30 minutes, as we see Hayley Simmons just having a chat there with Lizzie Deignan, and maybe Lizzie just saying, do you know what, knock it off a little bit, still a very, very long way to go. That just shows, doesn't it, the experience of Lizzie Deignan, and just by the shape of the peloton now, spread out across the road, they're just taking it down a little bit of a notch, still a very, very long way to go as they just go through the pits there.
Yeah, Lizzie, very experienced rider. She'll be able to work her way through the bunch without using too much energy, get us up to the front, communicate with her teammates. And obviously Hayley knows what she's doing now, ease up a little bit, and the bunch has swelled, as we can see.
Well, we're going to take ourselves another commercial break as the bunch fans out across the road through the feed. Don't go away. Welcome back. The bunch still all together, just coming towards the back end of the first lap. This is that cobbled section, and if any of you were watching Eurosport earlier in the week, this was that rather controversial transition then that we saw in the men's individual time trial, where they had the red carpet. No red carpet today, but I think a metaphoric red carpet. Such a welcome for these riders here today. It has been a wonderful week of racing, and I think it's got to be hats off to Bergen. We had a very interesting World Road Championships last year in Qatar, but this is what it's all about. It's about passion, it's about spectators coming out and loving the sport, and Bergen, they really have taken the World Championships to their heart, haven't they?
They have been fantastic. I think the crowds will be making such a huge difference to the riders. And I know Lizzie said in one of her interviews when they said to her, you know, why have you made such an effort to come back after your surgery so soon? And one of her things she mentioned was how much she was excited about racing in Norway, because around the world, she says that you see Norwegian fans and they're always so enthusiastic. So to be in Norway with all these Norwegian fans, it's been brilliant to see so much enthusiasm for the World Championships. Those crowds on that climb for the men's time trial were spectacular. Just a shame for me, I think the women didn't go up that, but that's another issue to debate. But the riders will love all the support. It does make such a huge difference when you are climbing a hill and you dig it in and it hurts and everything hurts as someone cheers you on, and if someone knows your name as well, it does make a nice little bit of difference. Yeah,
I was looking, browsing the internet the other day and looking at some of the newspapers, the Bergen newspapers, the Norwegian newspapers, and it made headlines that I think that even the people of Bergen and the race organiser, I don't think they expected quite as many people to come out and watch the race. But taking on your point in relation to the individual time trials, I think personally the women should do exactly the same distance and course as the men's. They're more than able to ride 40 kilometres fast, so a bit of an odd one, I think, that they had 2 completely different courses. But as you say, that's one for David Lepartillon, the new UCI president, to perhaps ponder on and change for the future, because as you said, it would have been absolutely wonderful to see both women and men being able to enjoy that crowd, that fervour, that kind of passion. But,
definitely. It got so many people talking about it as well. Like social media was filled with people saying, wow, this time trial. And that isn't always the words people use when they refer to time trials. So it was nice to see so much excitement around an individual time trial. And I don't think the results would have possibly even changed the women. I think Annemiek van Vleuten would still have been the winner. So there's always going to be riders that a certain course suits them and not somebody else. But I do think the World Time Trial Championships, different course each year, you know, slightly varying distances, terrains, it will suit someone different each year, and that just makes it even more exciting to keep watching it.
No, definitely. It certainly was a unique course for the men's. But we shall move on, as the riders are doing at the moment. About 2.5 kilometres to go. They're just now on the run into the finish line. They just rounded the top corner in Sandviken. And just out to the right-hand side. Well, that is the ford of Bjørfjorden. Spectacular views here. Wonderful buildings as well. An absolute lovely part of the world. And it looks like, Joe, we've got our first attacker of the day on the left-hand side here.
Yeah, so Sweden on the attack. I think I've just seen Mel Lowther in second wheel for GB in that bunch. So we've always seen a GB rider up at the front. But yeah, some early attacks going now towards the end of lap 1.
Well, this is the run into the line. You can just see the race convoy just snaking their way down. A long race convoy. Neutral service will be in there, as will the team cars for the various nations. So one rider has just escaped. We'll get her number as soon as we can for you. 2 kilometres till the first passage of the finish line. And still a very, very long 135.7 kilometres to go. Quick glance over her shoulder. And immediately she's opened up a pretty nice gap here. Not a particularly strong attack, more of one of those kind of stealth attacks where a rider just drifts on the front. But it looks like she's well into her rhythm now. And no response as yet from the peloton.
I think she would have been hoping for a couple of riders to come with her, but as yet nobody. But you know, not much response from the peloton. So you know, as they ride along a bit easier, there'll be someone that tries to bridge across, and then a couple more will go, then a couple more will go, and then it will sort of spring into action. But as yet, not much of a reaction going on behind. No,
not at all. It looks like it's the Polish team now, just on the front with that white kit, the red shorts, the white top, with the red stripe down the centre. Netherlands in close attendance, of course, in that familiar orange. The multicoloured peloton sweeps its way around, and this is that section of the course where the riders will be having that nagging headwind. And this is Sarah Penton of Sweden, looking very smooth, turning quite a big gear at the moment, rolling through. And as you said, if I'd have been her, I agree with your earlier statement, Joe, I'd have quite liked a little bit of company with such a long distance to go.
Yeah, it's always nice to be able to be in a break at a big championship race. You know, it's on TV, and you know, it's a nice little claim to fame to say you were in that break. I don't think any rider really wants to be away quite on their own for over 130 kilometres though. So she will be waiting for someone to make the jump, to bridge across now. We've seen a few teams gathering at the front. They'll be thinking this isn't a huge threat, this one rider away, but they'll want to be checking who tries to make the jump across now, and you know, don't want to miss that. If every rider could, you know, if the riders from the big teams could have somebody there, it takes the pressure off them chasing. So when riders do start to jump across, they'll want to be attentive to who is going.
No, definitely. 22 seconds is the lead for the 28-year-old from Sweden. Rides for Team Virtue Cycling Women. And she's actually the road race champion of Sweden, and looking very, very strong at the moment, gradually opening up that lead. But a smooth, steady effort, just rolling that big gear. Really appreciative crowd. This is that final chicane. Another right-hander before the road drops and then kicks up to the finish line. Timing on the right-hand side. We said around 30 minutes, between 25 and 30 minutes. Expect the pace of these laps to increase as the race goes on, especially in the last third, the last quarter. But no response from the peloton at the moment. I think, Joe, that indicates how much the riders actually fear this course, not wanting to go too early in this race, because quite often the first attacker in a world road race, in the women's and in the men's, is essentially the catalyst for that first big move to go clear.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of respect for the course and respect for the distance. We've seen so far, I've been surprised at how hard the races have looked by watching them. So riders will know this is a long way. There's a lot of times up those climbs, not just Salmon Hill, but the other one as well, the earlier climb. It's going to be a tough day out, so there'll be riders looking to conserve their energy. I'm pleased to see quite a lot of GB presence at the front, so we can see Danny King there in the centre of the picture. There's always been somebody attentive at the front of the bunch, but no one is panicking about this breakaway currently. She's got over 30 seconds, I think.
Yeah, well over 30 seconds now as the bunch roll across the line. See the stars and stripes. Megan Garnier just on the right-hand side there. Spain also represented in that yellow and red kit. 7 laps still to go. And around 35 seconds for our sole leader on the road, Sarah Penton of Sweden. There is Anna van der Breggen. And there is her palmares Olympic road champion, silver medalist at the World Road Race back in 2015. And she has had, Joe, an absolutely amazing season. Dominant, especially in the Hillier races. Silver medal, of course, earlier in the week in the individual time trial. Olympic champion. She is such a virtuoso performer. And you do wonder, don't you, within the Dutch team, although we've talked at length about the strength of depth, whether she desperately wants to win this world title. But it's going to be very interesting to see how things pan out, specifically with the Dutch team in the closing kilometres of this race.
It is going to be interesting because the two names that keep coming up are Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten, and they both ride for Holland. But Anna van der Breggen, fantastic season, Giro Rosa winner, winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Amstel Gold Race, Flèche Wallonne, overall Women's World Tour winner, like you say, silver in the time trial on Tuesday. Not that far behind Annemiek van Vleuten, but an incredible season, and already the Olympic champion, world champion. It's just something to add to her palmares now, which I'm sure she dearly wants to win that. But the team tactics will be interesting. It's a case of, who feels the best on the day, and at what point do you work that out, and at what point do you focus your attention on that rider. And we won't really be able to see that until the latter stages of the race. So I think in the early stages, it'll probably be quite open for either of them. And I think it'll be the latter stages when they think, who are we going to focus on here? But something I thought would be interesting this year was Anna van der Breggen riding for the team Boels Dolmans, which is an incredibly strong team. So many great riders there that can win bike races, and I always thought, I wonder how that's going to work out with so many winners on the one team. But it seems to have worked out well, and although she's had an amazing season herself, there have also been Boels Dolmans winners, other winners, Lizzie Dyke and Megan Garnier. Other riders have run bike races, and it seems to have worked very well having a team with options, because I think when you've got those options, it takes the pressure off you as well. It depends how you see it. Some riders will think they want everybody focused on them. Others might think, well, if I'm having a bad day, my teammate can win this, so it's not going to be the end of the world.
Definitely, you've got to ride selflessly, and that's the thing about cycling, isn't it? If you have an ego that dominates the team, it can cause division within the team. There has to be harmony, but of course, as we talked about a few moments ago, there has to be the ability, either from team management or from the road captain out on the road, to make dynamic decisions based on what is happening there and then. And I've no doubt, well, I haven't no doubt, I'm just trying to think about what the tactics may be in particular for the Dutch team, whether if the race fractures, maybe they're going to look at Van Vleuten going clear. If it's that there's a big group, maybe she'll work for Anna van der Breggen. All, as you say, depends on how the race pans out. It isn't just about the Dutch team. There's some extremely strong squads here, individual riders and teams that can really rip this race apart, and I do expect it. I think as many of the riders here, all of the favourites who've been spoken to, are kind of assuming that this race is going to break up and at least have a significantly reduced peloton at the end. So much can change. You can have a plan, but again, if you have one, all it needs is a rider with a mechanical failure, for example, or just has sore legs. Then you have to revert to plan B, and then plan C, and then you just essentially have to make it up as you go along, ride on feel and ride on instinct, and that's what's so fascinating. Yeah,
well, I think the Dutch could go down to plan H with 8 of them.
That's right.
Literally, any of those riders riding for a different nation, you could put them down as a potential winner today. It is so strong, so it's going to be up to the other nations to really take it to the Dutch, because on paper they have got such a strong team. An extra rider, 8 riders, because Marianne Vos is the European road race champion, so she gets an extra spot as well. It's going to be interesting what other teams are going to do to challenge them, because we know they've got the climbing strength, we know they've got the strength from the flatter parts, riders like Ellen van Dijk, we know they've got the speed as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing what other teams are going to do to make sure they don't have it all their own way in the latter stages. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's going to be very difficult to isolate the team from the Netherlands, because even if it's a hard, fast race, and they put the pressure, the rest of the field put the pressure on the climb, I can't see past the Dutch squad, to be perfectly honest with you. As you see, just the picture-in-picture there. There's our sole leader, Sarah Penton, bottom left and on your right-hand side. She's represented by the blue dot on the right, and the peloton around 40 seconds behind it. Nearly went up to a minute, and on that short, sharp climb that is essentially the precursor to Salmon Hill, the gap has come down slightly. But you quite often see that when a rider's out on their own, it's so crucial. She's clearly committed now. She's the road race champion of Sweden. She's got no assistance at all. So if she's going to try and stay out in front, she needs to make sure that she doesn't overcook it on the climbs and then lifts it up on the flatter sections.
Yeah, well, yesterday in the junior women's road race, the eventual winner, Pauline of Italy, there was one point where she was in sight on the climb, and it must have been about 12 to 15 second gap. And you thought, oh, they're going to just close this here, but they didn't close it, and she kept going here. She paced herself up that climb, and she carried on to win the race. And, you know, the gap will fluctuate a bit, and she's in the fortunate position she can ride to her own pace. She can get her own pace up the climbs, doesn't have to deal with the undulations of the bunch, you know, that sort of concertina effect that you get if you're a bit further back in the bunch. She can ride at her own pace, and that's a nice position to be in. It is hard because she's pushing her own wind the whole time, but she can at least ride at her own pace on the climbs.
Yeah, well, the gap has gone out again. 41 seconds is the gap back to the peloton, being led by the Swiss team. The Swiss have 3 riders in this field: Ramona Forcini, Nicole Hanselmann and Linda Ingegand. As we head back to the front, is setting that steady rhythm. And just looking at the speed she's going here, I mean, it does show that this really is a pretty significant climb. And as I say, the cumulative effect over 8 laps, long laps, 19.1 kilometres, will soon start to come into play. So what will riders be saying to each other at this kind of point? Will there be much kind of communication this earlier in the race, or will we see that happening later on?
I think there already will be communication. There'll be riders trying to work out what other teams' tactics are as well. They'll be looking at the Dutch and thinking, what are the Dutch doing? What are the Italians doing? What are the Brits doing? And everyone's going to be sort of figuring out how they feel and also how other riders are feeling. And you become, when you're racing with people, very often you become quite in tune with their body language, and you can sort of pick up when people are struggling, you know, whether it's a sort of a dropped shoulder or a bit of a wiggle. You can, I mean, I could always notice with my teammates, if someone was having a bad day, I could tell by riding behind them just by subtle changes in their body language. And the favourites will be looking at the other favourites and thinking, you know, how is she looking today? Is she looking cool and calm? Is she looking like she's under pressure at the moment? So far, it's probably difficult to see with this sort of pace in the climb, but we can see Lizzie Dyson on the top right of the screen there. Danny King also quite near the front of the bunch. So the Brits are keeping up the front, as well as the Dutch are, and the Germans, keeping an eye on things, keeping an eye on what's going on, making sure nobody goes across.
As you say, those little nuanced changes in body language, and all of these riders, they'll know each other. Many, of course, although not teammates today, are teammates in the day job, in the professional teams, and they know exactly what to look out for. But of course, then we use this word so often, bit of a cliche in terms of commentators, but it's a game of poker, so quite often, even if you're feeling bad, you want to try and hide that away, don't you? Or, conversely, you do quite often see riders actually exaggerating their body language to convey something completely different to how they're feeling. So we called it the French phrase when I was racing as an amateur many years ago. They used to call it faire un peu de cinéma. So so you could look as if you were fatigued, to encourage riders to do a little bit more work and then attack them and use the element of surprise. So there's various ways. It's such a fascinating sport in terms of the way you look at other riders, and also the little games that play out as well in the peloton.
Definitely, and I think there's always room for some mind games. I think that often starts before the race as well, even as far as looking at social media. And a lot of riders, when I used to race, when it came to something like the Olympics, they would switch off all their social media and not see what other people are tweeting, because it's so easy to tweet, you know, how good you're feeling or something, and if that gets in your head, that can really affect you. Personally, I never did actually turn it off, but a lot of riders do completely stay off social media, not try and read into what other people are saying, because there will be people out there that, you know, are trying to play a few mind games, are trying to get in everybody's heads. So some riders will completely ignore that and try and keep themselves away from it. Other riders will pick up on it a lot and respond to it. But like you say, with a lot of these riders being teammates on their trade teams, they'll probably know a few of the tricks, and they'll probably know of you know, the little changes in behaviour and body language that their teammates on the trade teams will have.
Definitely. And Danny King just on the left-hand side, just moved out of shot at the moment. And Maharus on the front there for Luxembourg. Another one of potential outside bets for a win today. The bunch just rounding that left-hand corner. This is the start of the climb proper, although they have actually been climbing for a number of kilometres already. The climb of Salmon Hill beckons once more, and now the United States just setting a bit more of a tempo. That arrowhead formation just indicating the willingness to try and set a slightly higher speed now. Still 6.5 laps to go, but just look at these flags, look at the support here. This makes so much difference as a rider, regardless of your ability, regardless if you're thinking of getting a medal or just trying to finish. The crowd do make so much of a difference, don't they?
They do. On a climb especially, you're going slower, so there's time to hear individual cheers even from spectators, especially if you've got friends or family there that are there personally to cheer you on. That really helps, and I think it just adds to the atmosphere and it adds to the adrenaline of being at such a big occasion that you just don't get ever on a training ride. And you know, this all helps adding that extra 1 or 2% on race day that you have compared to training. And I mean, I think these riders will be lapping this up. It does look very special there today.
It certainly does. And one of the things that I found was that quite often what you had to do when you were urged on by a particularly big crowd, like you said, often shouting your name, was that you had to back off because you get these ridiculously strong surges of adrenaline and you can end up pressing on too hard when you don't need to. So you do need to exercise quite a degree of control and discipline in relation to not actually reacting too much to the crowd, because you can actually feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and that kind of surge of adrenaline that could easily put you in the red at completely the wrong time.
I've been in that place myself a few times on the track, which I'm sure my teammates will recall vividly. But yeah, when you have got people cheering you on, if it's not quite at the point in the race where you really want to be putting the hammer down, it does take discipline to not completely get overwhelmed by that adrenaline and you know, take it and go with it. You do have to have an element of pacing yourself and an element of sticking to your game plan.
You certainly do. We just got a glimpse of Linda Boylan just at the back of the bunch there in the green of Ireland, the only Irish representation in the field today. And there is the gap. 24 seconds. It's come down significantly on the climb of Salmon Hill, unsurprisingly. But Sarah Penton still setting that smooth rhythm. Definitely not going to want to put herself in the red so early on. But a reasonable tempo being set now by the peloton. After that initial surge from one of the riders from the United States, looks like one of the United Healthcare riders, smiling on the front. Clearly she's feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we've seen a bit more Dutch presence now. That's Chantal Black running for Holland in the orange there in the centre of the picture. I keep catching glimpses of Lizzie Dylan. You can see her now on the left. She's doing a really good job of staying at the front of the bunch, but also not putting herself in the wind. So front half of the bunch, you'll be working a lot less hard than you will be at the back. You'll be coming round riders getting dropped, but you don't want to be on the front because obviously there you're pushing your own wind. And Lizzie is a master at riding in the best pace in the peloton. Something that I always never was particularly good at myself, and I used to watch her and think, how does she always in the right place at the right time? But sitting just a couple of riders back, out of the wind, able to see exactly what's going on, but not using any unnecessary energy, she is a master of that, and that's what she needs to do. At the early stage of this race, there's no need for her to attack or to do anything. She needs to sit there, look after herself, and judge how she's feeling.
Well, that, as you say, quite right, that is actually a skill, isn't it? Some riders never seem to be able to get it completely dialed. Other riders are better than others. And there are other riders that you look to that are almost artists at being able to duck and dive, bob and weave, surf the wheels, and basically ride their own game. And in a pre-race interview, Lizzie said she's got a great team around her. She doesn't know how she's going to perform, but she can look after herself, and she'll use the team when she needs to. And that's the thing. She won't unnecessarily use her troops up. She'll use the resources that she has at her disposal wisely. She'll communicate how she's feeling. But as you said, consummate at riding at or near the head of affairs without digging too deep into the reserves. And in the World Championships, I think this is the race where that skill needs to be done to its best effect. Yeah,
and I think the other GB girls as well will have a bit more freedom because Lizzie, you know, like we said, we're not going to put any pressure on her for a result today, but riders in their own right, Hannah Barnes, Alice Barnes, Eleanor Barker, Danny King, Hayley Simmons, they've all, you know, had brilliant seasons, all had wins, and it'll be interesting to see how they can all do in their own right. I've seen Eleanor Barker near the head of the fairs as well. She was on the right of the picture earlier. She's been having a brilliant season on the road this year, despite having still ridden the track bars in April, winning a world title and 2 silver medals there. She's then made a lovely switch over to road racing and had a really good season, so it's good to see her up there today. And it'll be interesting to see how they all sort of fare over the length of this race. Hannah Barnes particularly had a brilliant season. Well, both the Barnes sisters, both going to be on Canyon SRAM next year, so it'll be interesting to see how they work together and how this race develops.
It certainly will. We've just rounded the top of Salmon Hill. Now they're dropping down the descent, kicking back into a headwind very, very briefly before swinging back and picking up the wind in their back. But it is the Dutch squad. And meanwhile, we're on board with somebody midway through the peloton, and the gap has come down considerably now. Only 17 seconds for our sole leader, Sarah Penton, out in front from Sweden. And a few of the riders will have these cameras attached to the rear of their saddles, just giving us that added dimension. I find it interesting, but I also find it often a little bit nauseating, a little bit discombobulating. It's quite it can be a little bit of an assault on the senses.
I think it's interesting for people who have not ridden in a bunch to get an idea of it, but I do think we get a better point of view of the race when we're watching it head on. But yeah, it's quite interesting. We've had it on the track as well, and it's always quite funny to watch when you see people sort of pulling faces when it's really getting hard. At the moment, not any of that at the moment, but when you get to the tougher stages of the race, when you get to see those grimaces being pulled, that would be interesting. Well,
one thing is for certain, as we get deeper and deeper into this race, there's certainly going to be more grimacing. So please keep it here on Eurosport, your home of cycling. Well, welcome back. Still our sole leader out in front, representing Sweden, Sarah Penton. She has a very slender lead now over the peloton, 17 seconds. The second descent of Salmon Hill is done and dusted. Now heading in a northerly direction to the furthest tip of the circuit in Sandviken, before the swing back round, following the shoreline, the beautiful sights and the beautiful sounds of Bergen. But opening up the lead to now at 19 seconds. And we're talking during the break, Joe, weren't we, about how important it is that riders race aggressively, because Sarah Penton, the sole rider out in front, she's a classy bike rider, as I said before, Swedish national road race champion, arguably in with a shout at this race. But when you look at racing in general, attacking is so important to provide a spectacle, but it always generally falls on the shoulders of somebody. But it's never. How does that actually kind of pan out? Riders clearly ride on feel. Would you think that was a plan of Sarah Penton? Because it always interests me, and having been a rider, that riders, arguably with a hope of winning, go on essentially like a suicide mission. But it is actually quite important to provide a catalyst for the rest of the racing.
Definitely, and I think if you've got a team meeting before the start where you're all told, save your energy, sit in the wheels, don't do too much early on, that's going to create a negative race. So it's best when you've got a bigger team to say, right, your job is to make it hard early on, attack, keep attacking, try and force a breakaway. And it's unfortunate here we've only got one rider. I'm sure she would like a few other riders with her, but it does fall on somebody to make the bike race. And with this being live coverage on TV, it's a really important spectacle in my eyes for the women's side of the sport, that we don't have as much coverage as we do of men's racing. There is getting more, but there's still not lots for the amount there is in the calendar. It is a shame there's not more on TV, so I think for me it's important that this is an exciting bike race. It is such a good showcase for the sport, for everyone in the world to watch it. So I'm hoping that the women will make the most of that, and it seems to be so far. Sarah Penton's taken on herself to be the sole attacker early on. The pace here will be tougher. It's not a case of everyone else is just riding around easily. Everyone else here is riding hard. They don't want anyone else to go away. They're hoping no one else is going to join her, perhaps, to make a strong breakaway. So I think it's the GB girls in front at the moment, just keeping an eye on things, just setting a tempo. But as you see from riders going out the back, it is a tough pace already. Yeah, definitely. Said Sarah Penton, a classy bike rider indeed. And it's Hannah Barnes who took them round the corner. In close attendance was Danny King as well. And it's the first glimpse of Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the rider just to the left of Danny King wearing number 41. It's Barnes on the front now, that long ponytail. And there she is, right on cue on her canyon. But Ferrand-Prévot looking pretty comfortable. And looking back to Plouay, as we have Ferrand-Prévot on the screen, although she hasn't had much road racing at all compared to the vast majority of the favourites in this race, the way she rode at Plouay and the way she tore the race apart in the last couple of laps was mightily impressive, and you cannot rule her out. Although riding mountain biking completely different, she podiumed, of course, as you mentioned earlier on, in a third place in the World Mountain Bike Championships. Road racing, a completely different discipline, but I think definitely an indicator of the sort of condition she has. Definitely. She's got enough experience as a rider overall that she doesn't need to race week in, week out for experience. You know, she knows the other riders, she knows her other competitors, and she knows herself, and she knows how to peak. And like we talked about before, she's had some issues with injuries, but this season, second place at Plouay behind Lizzie Deignan shows she seems to have been timing her form correctly for the right part of the season. This is definitely a course that suits her. She's a rider that you'd name straight away in conjunction with Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten as someone who could definitely perform on this course. She's been a previous world champion. She knows what it's about. Supremely talented rider, so she's definitely one to watch today. We'll see how she plays her cards and, you know, how late she decides to leave it. Probably not expected to see much action from her early on, probably in the latter stages to see her go on the attack, but probably not much in these first few laps. But she is staying out of trouble nicely, keeping an eye on things at the head of the bunch.
Yeah, it was, as you said, keeping out of trouble. Because there are several little technical pinch points on this circuit. We've already had a couple of little spills, thankfully none since that opening lap. And this is where the course doubles back round and heads back into the headwind. And Sarah Penton here opened up her lead again, came back down to around 17 seconds after the ascent of Salmon Hill, and has now unsurprisingly gone out again. She's clearly pacing herself very, very well, as we talked about earlier on, Joe, not going too deep on the climb, because that can be absolutely catastrophic. So difficult to recover once you've put yourself into the red with so much distance to go. So it's best actually to undercook it on the climbs, then pick things up over the top.
Definitely, so we'll probably naturally see the gap come down when we come on the climbs and then go back out again on the rest of the course. Also, she's got the advantage of, with all these twists and turns, she's keeping herself out of sight now, so, you know, out of sight, out of mind. Is really useful when you're away on a solo breakaway. You know, it makes all the difference, and it sounds silly to say that even if it's just a few seconds further and you can just be out of sight, it does make a big difference. But you're back up to 36 seconds now, so the bunch will be changing speed as well. You know, they won't be riding at a consistent pace. We've seen different riders on the front, different teams come to the front. I think most teams sort of, you know, talking to each other, deciding what they want to do. Lizzie Deignan coming up to the front now as well, also with some Dutch riders.
Yeah, so Deignan just moving around. Polish riders too at the front. A real mix. No one team taking up the pacemaking. Just riders keen on getting to the front of the peloton. And quite often, it's just the kind of organic movement of riders wanting to get into a good position that actually gives drive and momentum to the bunch rather than an individual riding hard on the front. It's just the willingness and the keenness of riders to move to the front. Because as we both know, having ridden World Championships in the past and ridden in teams, that you know that the team manager will say to you at the start, no matter what the strategy of the team, don't ride at the back of the bunch. Stick at or near the head of affairs. So pretty much the director sportif or the manager's kind of instructions are going to be ringing in the ears of the riders all day long, essentially.
Definitely. Every bike race I've ridden, the first thing the team manager says, stay in the top 20 riders all race, whatever you do. Whether your job is to sit in or whether it's to attack, whether it's to look after somebody else, always number one, stay in the top 20 riders. Obviously, everybody can't do that when you've got 150 bike riders there. So there will always naturally be this effect where riders keep coming around, keep coming to the front, and that will naturally speed up the bunch, and especially on these sections of the course, riders will use this chance to move up. The riders that aren't such strong at climbing, the riders that can't use the climbs to move up, they will use the opportunities here to move up through the wheels and get themselves in a better position and give themselves a bit of sliding room.
Well, looks like we've got one of the British riders who's attacked off the front here.
This is Mel Lowther, so she rides for Team Bree. She's on the British Cycling Senior Academy programme based in Manchester. So this is a big opportunity for her to be at this race. She's had a brilliant season this year, signed for Team WNT for next year. And I know she came to this race probably not knowing quite what to expect, you know, World Championship level. And she said herself, you know, she's very proud to have been selected and to represent Great Britain. But yeah, off on the attack here. Perhaps that's been an instruction by another teammate to go and try and make the gap across. Well,
clearly she's got a strong rider. If she can bridge that gap to Sarah Penton, right on cue, here she is. Not long until they'll cross the finish line again. But a good move there by Mel Lowther, only 21 years of age. Be interesting to see whether she has the speed, the ability, the strength to cross this gap. But of course, look at this, fantastic stuff here. Still 6 laps to go. Sarah Penton waving to the crowd. You quite often see that, don't you, coming into the finish of a race when a rider's about to put their arms into the victory salute. But I think that just shows the kind of absolutely wonderful atmosphere we've got here in Bergen.
Well, she's lapping it up. She's loving it, and why not? Fair play to her, you know, solo breakaway at the World Championship road race. So, yeah, she's enjoying the experience, and the crowd's loving it as well. The crowds are really getting behind her. So it is great to see, like we said before, the crowds do make such a difference. So, yeah, why not enjoy it? Why not make the most of it? Here she comes over the finish line.
Yes, 6 laps to go will be when she rolls across the line to the roars of a very appreciative crowd here in Bergen. Takes a sip from her bottle. She'll be doing that at regular intervals. Little and often is the way to feed. So 6 laps to go in the Elite Women's World Road Race Championships here in Bergen. Well, welcome back, and you join us as Mel Lowther of Great Britain has joined Sarah Penton. So now we have 2 leaders out in front. Just over a quarter of this Women's World Road Race Championships now done. And Great Britain in force at the front of the bunch here. A really interesting move there for Mel Lowther, and a very, very classy young bike rider.
Mel is the current Under-23 National Road Race Champion and silver medalist in the Under-23 National Time Trial Championships this year. She's also had a couple of wins in the Women's National Road Race Series this year. So having a fantastic season. Had a string of injuries, bad crashes actually, the year before. I think she knocked her teeth out at one point. So some really bad series of crashes for Mel, but this year seems to be her year. So already some fantastic results, a call up to the GB team for the World Championships, and now away in the break. So fantastic year for her already so far.
No, great year, great experience riding at this level. I'm not sure the gap there is actually correct. Looks like they've got around 20 or 30 seconds at the very least. There is the blackboard on the right-hand side. And the job of that motorbike is to indicate to the peloton the time gap to the group in front. And there they are. So the Swede leads Britain in 2nd position there. And quite often when we see a rider jumping across a gap like that, it's not uncommon for a rider just to sit on for a little bit. And when I say sit on, it's sit in the slipstream of the other rider, just to get a bit of a breather, because that will have taken a fair bit of effort to get across that gap.
Definitely. So Mel would have made a big effort there to bridge across. So a big attack from the bunch, trying to cross, what, 40+ seconds as quickly as possible. Once she's made the junction, take a bit of recovery. Equally, Sarah Penton will be glad to have someone else there. So she'll be like, OK, you get your breath back and then you come through and help me. So it's in their best interest to work together now, because the 2 of them together will be significantly stronger than any one of them on their own. So it's good to see the 2 of them now, and now over a minute.
Yeah, that's a very, very healthy lead. Again, a great ride by Mel Lowther to jump across that gap. The last thing you want to do is try and attempt to bridge a gap when it's 2 or 3 minutes. So when it was hovering around 30 seconds, she's clearly riding with intelligence as well. That's eminently bridgeable, although it takes a fair bit of effort to do. Once she's rested and recuperated, they should prove to be a reasonably formidable force out in front. And as you said, the gap now up to 1 minute and 9 seconds. Still no real coordinated chase from the bunch behind, although they're moving along at a reasonable rate of knots. Still a good tempo being set. But now, with the duo able to share that pacemaking, that'll add a little bit of impetus to the group in front.
It will, and it takes the pressure of the British riders in the peloton as well, because now it's definitely not their responsibility to chase anything. So we've still got presence at the front. There's Danny King there on the right of the picture. Lizzie Digner's still in the centre of the bunch as well, and resting nicely there. I've seen Eleanor Barker as well. We can see Alice Barnes actually there. I can just about see her with her blue helmet from her team drop cycling there on the right of the bunch. So all the GB riders there, they can relax a little bit now. They've got a rider in the break. It's not their responsibility to manage the gap anymore. They'll have to look to the other teams to do that. So that's a nice position for them all to be in. No,
it certainly is. We saw them riding at or near the head of affairs, but as you said, Joe, to get somebody in the front so early on takes an immense amount of pressure off. That means that Lizzie and Hannah can look to the rest of the peloton to use their resources, because Mel Lowther got a great future ahead of her, but we know she's probably not going to be trying to win this race. It's more of a tactical manoeuvre out in front to just take the pressure off the British team. So a really good, strong position for Great Britain. And there you can just see Lizzie Dignan just coming towards the top of your screen with that long ponytail, that distinctive look of hers. Keep an eye out, she's got the orange helmet on. So this is that first climb on the circuit before it drops down, and then we tackle the climb of Salmon Hill. And this in itself, there's Dignan. She looks pretty comfortable at the moment. What do you think? I mean, she's a very, very stylish rider at the best of times, but I think although we're early in the race, she looks pretty fluid. And I think the fact that she's riding at the head at the head of affairs near the front of the peloton. I think that says a lot.
Lizzie Deignan always looks good on the bike, though. She's just got that style about her. And she always rides, like I say, very well at the front of the peloton. But she's nicely tucked in on the wheel of Danny King there. So Danny King is a brilliant bike rider in her own right. Had a fantastic run at the Tour of Yorkshire earlier this year. But she's probably here in a support role of Lizzie. She's probably saying to Lizzie, you know, get on my wheel. You know, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? And there'll be some communication between the two of them there. It's good to see Lizzie up here. She's doing all the right things. And, you know, the latter stages of the race will be the real test for her, and that's where we'll work out whether she is a real contender for the win today or not. But like I keep saying, there is no pressure on her at all today, and she knows herself the victory for her is being on the start line, so she can ride this race thinking it's not her responsibility to make the race. You know, the pressure's on the other riders. But Mel Lowther here, I bet she did not think she would come to her first World Road Race Championships and be away in the break, so what a good day for her.
No, it's fantastic for riders to get involved in the racing, not just making up the numbers. Such a good experience for her. Clearly going very, very strongly indeed. And bridged across the gap in no time at all, taking it a little bit gingerly around that corner, understandably so. This is a very technical parkour. Thank heavens that it hasn't rained again today. Of course, this being a relatively urban circuit, it's not just the corners, but you have to contend with white paint, zebra crossings, etc. As we see some hardy walkers, clearly a warm day. Lots of t-shirts and shorts there. Not normally what you'd see at this time of year in Norway. But it does make a big difference as a rider when you wake up, throw open the curtains and you've got blue sky and sunshine. Some riders perform better, of course, in the wet conditions, but I think from a morale perspective, having conditions like this, I mean, pretty much everybody is going to be happy with those conditions and everybody's morale is going to be sky high.
Oh, definitely. I always like the good weather. I would call myself solar-powered as a rider. I did not like the bad weather at all. There will be lots of riders that do relish that, though, the bad weather, because they'll know that it cracks other riders. So they might not perhaps actually enjoy the pouring rain, but they will enjoy the fact that some of their rivals will crack. However, today we haven't got that, so we have got nice weather. So everyone probably would have opened their curtains this morning and thought, oh, nice day for a bike race, but also it's a nice day for the spectators as well. And it brings everybody else out and it makes everyone else enjoy the whole experience, which is always a good thing.
It certainly is. 1 minute and 3 seconds for our two leaders. Mel Lowther there in second position, turning a nice low gear in comparison to Sarah Penton, turning a higher gear, but riders use different styles on the bikes. Ideal cadence around 90 RPM, but again, experienced riders will often turn big gears or lower gears. That is down to personal choice and experience as well, isn't it? Definitely.
So that you're sort of trained to be more efficient at one way or the other, and you'll work out what works better for you. You know, also, if anyone comes from a track background, they're normally more likely to spin a bit more. But most riders will work out sort of what is the best style for them, and there'll always be people advising you how to ride, and you know what's the best way to do it. But you sort of learn yourself what works out best, and you know if you get it wrong, you learn very quickly as well.
You certainly do. Well, a big welcome to all of our international viewers. A couple of laps into the race. Now, next time through the finish line will be 5 laps to go. And there are our two leaders out in front. Mel Lowther, the 21-year-old under-23 road race champion of Great Britain, setting the tempo on this climb. And with her for company, having bridged across about 5 or 6 kilometres ago, is Sarah Penton, the 28-year-old Swedish road race champion. Looking good on the climb. In fact, it looks like Lowther's actually dropping Penton, injecting a little bit of pace onto the climb, and I must admit, Lowther was turning a nice low gear that looked very, very comfortable, and maybe going a little bit too hard for her Swedish breakaway partner.
Yeah, they need to pace themselves at this point, so I think when you're in a position where you've jumped across to a break, you've been out front for a lot less kilometres than the other person, and you're going to feel a bit better, and you're going to have those fresher legs, and you're going to be enthusiastic to keep that gap high. But they need to relax to their own pace. They're far better off working together than they are leaving each other. But yeah, we can see she has drawn out quite a big gap here, though.
Yeah, I think the advice here would be definitely to wait up, because Sarah Penton, as we've noticed in the first couple of laps, she was the only attacker. She did actually knock it off considerably on the climb, but could really lift it on the flat. So my advice would be, and she may be getting that information through as well, is to wait. There's no point in riding on her own at the moment. Will they get back? Will she get back in contact, or is the gap opened out? No, Lowther is pressing on. A little bit of a surprise here. This is the midsection before they get onto the climb proper. This is essentially a bit of a plateau, before the categorised part of the climb actually begins.
Perhaps they've had a chatter, perhaps Sarah Penton said, you know, I'm cooked, that's me done, you know, you carry on. They might have had that communication. Mel seems quite intent here to continue at her own pace, and fair play to her. This is what she thinks she can maintain, then go for it.
Yeah, well, now 52 seconds, the lead's come down slightly, but Mel Lowther has decided to press on her own. And fair play, clearly full of confidence, takes a look round. I don't know if she actually knew that if she dropped Sarah Penton, is she going to back things off a little bit and wait? I mean, quite a critical decision that she's about to make, because the last thing that these two riders want to do is to ride at 10 seconds between each other for the next couple of laps. They might as well wait up, compromise losing maybe 10 or 15 seconds on the climb, because riding as a duo on the flats, especially into that headwind as they come into the finish, they'll get even more benefits than riding separately.
Oh, definitely they will. So especially, like you say, on the flatter sections with the headwind as well, being able to sit on a wheel, you'll save a good 30% in the amount of watts you're putting out compared to on the front. So working together as a team, well, not as a team, as a duo, will make a huge difference. So we can see Mel here, she does keep having a little look over her shoulder, seeing what that gap is. Sarah Penton's legs could have gone. She could be thinking, you know, that's me done. I can't go any further. I attacked early on, and that's me done for the day. So Mel needs to make a decision here. Depends how big that gap is, and depends if she can look back and see if the speed rider is gaining on her or not.
Yeah, you don't know exactly what's going on in the mind of Sarah Penton. She certainly looks like she's enjoying herself, as illustrated by that big smile to the crowd, even a wave that she afforded herself as she went through for the second lap. So it could be that she's not feeling great and just wanted to end the season in a blaze of glory as well. We do not know. But Mel Lowther, on the other hand, is looking very, very sprightly on this climb as the bunch round that bottom corner and begin this climb of Salmon Hill. 6.4% average gradient over 1.5 Ks. But of course they've been climbing significantly for the last 2 or 3 kilometres as well. So a lot of this course is uphill, and they've got the fast descent back down before they drop into the finish again. And still an even tempo being set. Dutch riders, Americans, also Germany represented at the front there. And meanwhile, out in front, 44 seconds, which is looking pretty strong. Not too much rocking of the upper body there. Turning that low gear looks very smooth and strong at the moment.
She does. She looks really strong on the bike. Nice, strong core strength. Putting all the power through her legs here on this climb. The TV's always deceptive over how steep the climb actually is. It often doesn't look anywhere near as bad on camera as it actually is in real life. But she'll be lapping up all the crowd support here. And, you know, she's away on her own at the World Championship road race. You know, she's doing her job. She's doing exactly what she was told to do. You know, she would have had instructors from her teammates, and she's getting on with it. And fair play to her to attack this sort of field in your first World Championships.
Well, it shows a lot of courage, and that she's not afraid of the field, because it really is absolutely stacked with talent, as you would expect, of course, from a World Championships. And a team we haven't talked too much about, as we see the gap now, 36 seconds, still 107 kilometres to go, is the Australian team, because that's an interesting one, isn't it? We had selection issues coming into the race. They're fielding a full team of 7, but coming into the race, 2 of their top riders weren't actually picked. So in terms of, I don't know, not really soap opera stuff, but it was quite an interesting lead-in for the Australian team into this race.
It was. So they announced their selection for the race, and they announced 5 riders, but they had actually qualified the full 7-rider quota, being one of the top-ranked teams in the world. So a lot of riders immediately questioned that decision and questioned why they hadn't been selected, and or not even just a question of why certain individuals hadn't been selected, but more, I think, the point was why a full team hadn't been selected. And I think a lot of people said, why not field a full team if you've got the potential to? Having never organised the logistics of a major competition, I wouldn't like to comment on all the cost of it all and everything, so I'm sure there is more to it than that. But personally, I think it is, if you've got the spots there, then use them, because you can't buy experience, and the experience of riding at the World Championships is really important. Plus the fact being on the start line with a full team, I think that gives such a good message to the other nations, rather than just saying, oh, there's only a few of us here. To have a full set of riders on the start line, I think that's a more powerful position. Even if your teammates might not be there in the latter stages, they're still there at the start, and they can still do a job early on, as we're seeing Mel Lowther doing here. You know, there's always opportunities to use extra riders working towards a common goal. So it it was a strange decision, but it then was reversed. So that's how the story goes on. So a couple of riders appealed. The appeals were recognised, and then 2 extra riders were added to the roster. So it was Chloe Hosking and Rachel Nayland added to the Australian squad. So they now do have a full team of 7 riders in the race.
They do indeed, and just to go through the Australian squad in its entirety, as the gap has now come down a little bit to 29 seconds. Gracie Elvin, Catherine Garfoot, Shara Gillow, Chloe, the aforementioned Chloe Hoskin, Rachel Nayland, Sarah Roy and Amanda Spratt. That is the Australian team. Very, very talented riders indeed. But I think it is worth mentioning, it's a signal of intent as well, fielding if you've qualified 7 riders. It's a signal of intent, and if you send 5 riders, even for the other, there's the disappointment of the riders that weren't selected, and then there's also the kind of atmosphere within the team of the riders who have been picked. It's like, well, we've got 7, why aren't we being backed up with another 2 riders as well to give us the best kind of chance? So it's not just about the riders that have been left out. It would, I would imagine, from my point of view, impact on the riders that are there to race as well. But with 7 riders, they're gonna, I know they've put that behind them now. The decision has been completely reversed, but no, an interesting one. But I think you live and learn. But no, the Australians do have a very, very potent team indeed in this World Championships. As we just saw, Corinne Rivera just moving up the outside there, perhaps to drop back to one of the team cars. But a few riders already in a little bit of distress on the 3rd ascent of Salmon Hill.
Yeah, the pressure is on here, and we're already seeing more riders in trouble, which we did say at the start of this, that this would happen. Riders would be going out the back each lap. There'll be a few more riders that are struggling, and this is going to be a real race of attrition. 8 laps around this course, 8 times up that climb, and the previous climb as well, is going to really take its toll.
Yeah, lots of springboards, possible springboards for attacks. And sections of this course that really do drain and sap the strength, slowly but surely, lap by lap. It really is a slow burn, but a wonderfully rich slow burn, the World Championships. So much at stake. 3 medals, of course, but only 1 World Championship jersey. Coveted in cycling, and along with Olympic gold medal, the ultimate holy grail for any rider, regardless of their discipline. One solo leader, Mel Lowther of Great Britain. Welcome back. Mel Lowther of Great Britain holds a 15-second advantage over the peloton. We've just gone through the pit area. Many riders swinging over to the right-hand side, taking the opportunity to get a bottle or some food. And again, Joe, so important in a race of this distance. Any race, in fact, but especially one so long, that the riders get the right nutrition, get those calories, keep themselves hydrated.
Definitely. So it's so easy to wait until you are hungry or thirsty, but that point is definitely too late. So in a bike race this long, you need to be eating in the first hour to fuel yourself, you know, for the latter hours. So having a nutrition strategy in place, some riders will plan it out quite detailed, some riders won't, but eating and drinking is really important. So keep getting those fresh bottles, and if you've got a teammate that's a favourite and they miss a bottle, you know, one of your teammates can then give the bottle across to them. So runners will be working together as well, but early on you need to look after yourself. You need to keep eating, you need to keep drinking, well hydrated, otherwise you're going to get cramps. You know, it's so important to do. But all these riders, they've been racing week in, week out. Newly this year, races have been allowed to be up to 160 kilometres for women. It used to be a limit of 140 kilometres, but this year that limit's gone up, and this isn't the first bike race that's been this long, so they'll all know what they're doing. But it is very important not to forget and not to, you know, get carried away in the moment of the race. You know, if you miss that feed, get one next time, because it is really important.
Absolutely vital. Setting a makes it, and it is very easy, as you say. Even some of the best riders from time to time forget to eat. You hear some of the best riders post-race say, I just didn't get enough food, I forgot to eat, I forgot to drink. It isn't uncommon, and again, that is a skill in itself, to make sure you remind yourself to eat. But with the World Championships being on a course, there is that opportunity, that little gentle reminder, quite often in a place-to-place on a stage race, a little bit different, especially if there's aggressive racing from the off and you've got other stresses and strains to deal with. You can be an hour and a quarter, hour and a half into a race and realise you've not even taken a sip from your bottle quite often, so then it's like panic stations. But in a race like this, you need, again, it's all about that discipline and that rigour, understanding yourself and reminding yourself to eat and drink, That's part of the one of the many skills it takes to be an accomplished road rider. Being able to measure your effort, make sure you get that nutrition on board, know where to place yourself in the peloton. It's all that kind of road craft, as well, of course, as the physical ability to ride.
Yeah, nutrition will vary as well depending on the conditions. So in extremely cold or extremely warm conditions, you'll obviously need to drink more in the heat. But also in particularly cold conditions, your body will be burning more calories just to keep warm. So you need to make sure you're eating more as well. Fortunately, the conditions here are pretty good, so it won't be too much trouble. But still, it's just remembering, like we say, keep eating, keep drinking, little and often, all the time.
Well, that will be drilled home as well, of course, by the team manager. Before and during, instructions often yelled out as the riders roll through the pits. As we just saw Lydia Boylan just rolling through at the back of the bunch there, representing Ireland. But a different shape to the peloton now, and the lead has really come down now for Mel Lowther. A good attack by her. She joined forces with Sarah Penton, dispatched Sarah Penton quite quickly on the climb, but a few little tentative moves now starting to go. The bunch now really starting to warm up.
Yeah, I think I saw some Dutch riders there igniting some moves now, and to be honest, the Dutch are so strong. No other teams really need to do any work, but here, look, straight across and straight past Mel Lowther. Mel's going to try and get on this wheel, but this is going to be extremely tough.
It certainly is. They've just gone over that cobbled section, so a counter-attack here from one of the riders from the Netherlands. Fair play to Mel Lowther, straight into the slipstream of the rider from the Netherlands. One of the Germans also trying to get across the gap here. Still 99 kilometres to go, but great to see some real aggressive racing. Starting to test the legs a little bit, stringing the bunch out in the process. But Mel Lowther, good to see her getting back into the slipstream and actually willingly assisting with the pacemaking as well.
Yeah, really good for Mel to get on that wheel. She doesn't really need to do much work, though. Like we said before, the Dutch are the team to beat here, so she can roll through, but they've not got much of a gap on the bunch there. The rest of the bunch is like, whoa, 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 we're not letting you get away.
They certainly aren't. And there is the bunch, only a handful of seconds behind in one long line, snaking along this absolutely stunning course here. They'll swing around in a moment and then head in towards the finish line. So this really is the most northerly part of the circuit. Before they head back on themselves and just look at that. A perfect illustration of the speed of this peloton now. Interesting to see what the lap time is. A couple of words being exchanged there as they just go past the 3 kilometres to go board. I wonder what was said.
Yeah, I wonder what was said. So we've got Italy on the front of the bunch chasing. Holland and GB away, having a bit of a conversation there. If I were Mel, I wouldn't feel under any pressure to work in this situation, but perhaps she's being told that she should. Well,
that quite often is the case when you are a younger rider, less experienced rider. It's quite often easy to be cajoled and coerced into working when you don't need to. And that's how you learn, that's how you get that strength of character. It's all about team tactics, but quite often you'll get a rider with more experience inadvisedly persuading you to work when actually you don't need to. Mel's been away on her own for over half a lap, and it's already spent a lot of energy, so unsurprisingly I don't think she's actually able to start chasing now. But look at this, several explosive attacks coming from the bunch now. Italy in that dark blue kit leading the chase.
Yeah, Mel's done really, really well to stay with the head here, because this is a tough pace now. The whole bunch is chasing them, you know, everyone's getting active, and they've got a very slender lead. I think they're going to make the junction now, though. Yeah, it is all back together. Gruppo compacto, as the Italians say. And there is the peloton. Several riders just at the back end. If you look towards the bottom left of your screen, big gaps opening up between the wheels of the riders. Again, another real indicator of the speed, the pressure that's being applied at the front of the bunch as they snake the way back to the centre of Bergen and the finish line one more time. And yet another attack on the right-hand side. One of the German riders goes clear, and that's Romy Kasper of Germany, just testing herself. Brought straight back by the Netherlands. There's some really aggressive racing so early in the race. Remember, still 97 kilometres to go. And a real willingness to attack, or at least test the opposition here. Australia imposing a little bit of order on the peloton. Well, that was a nice little bit of action there. Yeah, whenever one of the Dutch riders moves, everyone else is straight onto it, because they know how strong every single rider in that team is. There's nobody in that team where you think, yeah, they're not a threat, they're just here to do a job. Everyone there could potentially win the bike race, so any Dutch rider that goes to cover a move, everyone will also cover that. Yeah, as you said, every Dutch rider considered a genuine threat, but now
a little bit of a ceasefire in hostilities, a bit of an entente cordiale, as riders continue to move up the outside of the bunch to get into prime position. But a nice little bit of a slowing down there. I think many riders wouldn't have particularly liked, some riders I guess like that faster pace, but when it's lined out like that, you know you've got such a long distance still to go. The last thing you want is the sting in the legs so early on. So still 96 kilometers to go. Just going past that beautiful ship on the right-hand side, flying the flag of Norway. Of course, so many Norwegian flags have been here this week. So many fans coming to the sides of the road. A real carnival atmosphere here in the centre of Bergen. And I think as we get deeper and deeper into this race, I think people will be leaving their plates and their beers, moving to the side to cheer these riders through. It has been an absolutely wonderful week of racing. One of the best World Championships I think I've seen in a very, very long time. Some great racing. But still the world champion to be crowned. And there, what a shot of the crowd here in the centre of Bergen.
Look at all those crowds, and you know, it's stark contrast to last year in Qatar, but it's amazing to see that. And like I say, everyone will really appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate just watching it as a cycling fan myself, but it's good to see so many people out supporting this race.
It certainly is. Well, there we go, all back together as they go round this final chicane. That's the 500 metres to go board. So just study that finish. They then swing left. A little 100-metre section, and then it swings right. And there on the right-hand side, you can just see that blow-up. Well, the big blow-up of the World Champions jersey. Just, there you go, right on cue. And that is what the riders are fighting for in this race. That is what all of the riders have been fighting for this week. The coveted rainbow bands of World Champion. Whoever wins this today will get to carry that jersey for the next 12 months. So, so prestigious. Who will it be? Only time will tell. There's a rider from the Czech Republic leads the bunch through now with 5 laps to go. 1 minute and 35 on the clock. 5 laps to go here at the World Championships in Bergen. The bunch still all together. Czech Republic just taking the wind on the front. Now the Australians move into position. So many beautiful different jerseys. This is the one of the only opportunities, apart from the European Road Championships and of course the Olympics, that we get a chance to see the riders in the unfamiliar garb of the national kits. But I must admit, it is good to see. And one of my favourite kits, if you don't mind me saying, is the United States Stars and Stripes. Just on the centre, it's Garnier just sat on the front there at the moment. And a slightly different look to the Great Britain kit this year, HSB Bank coming on board. So a slightly different feel. And being a little bit long in the tooth myself, I've seen various iterations of GB kit over the years. But yeah, I must admit I quite like this one as well.
The best giveaway when watching these bunches to work out who's who, if you're not familiar, seeing them in national kit, is the helmets and the bikes. So the helmets, particularly the Boels-Dolmans, have got a nice orange-coloured helmet, not the fluorescent orange one, but there'll be Megan Garnier on the front there. She rides for Boels-Dolmans and also Team USA here, so quite easy to spot her. There's Hayley Simmons there in the red helmet. She's rides for Great Britain, but also a Team WNT rider. So I always watch out for the helmets and the bike. They're normally one of the good giveaways, but it also lets you know who's in what trade team for the rest of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good tip there from Joe. Look at the bikes and then look at the helmets as well. So many of these riders hiding not just in the kit of their national team, but of course behind sunglasses as well. Identification always a little bit of a challenge, but then of course you've got the styles of the riders that help you pick them out. And now it's Switzerland taking to the front with a team of just 3 here, setting this tempo, willing to try and pick things up just a little bit. And after that initial couple of attacks that we saw, it is all back together. So clearly in this race, riders, we talked about the course, we talked about riders not knowing what the course was going to be like. But when we've looked at the junior race we've had so far, we've got the under-23 men's, and the race has split up. We've got reduced bunches. We haven't had a bunch sprint so far. We've had 2 individual winners, and we've also had a 2-man breakaway in the under-23 Worlds. So I think the riders here have learned from what they've already seen. Obviously riding their own race as well, but they'll be mindful of the way that the field has been reduced over the course of this difficult, challenging course. And I think because of the added distance of this race, just riding in the early stages a little bit conservatively.
Definitely, and riders will try and sort of assign laps to their teammates. So we've just seen Hayley Simmons on the front of the bunch turning the screw now, putting some riders in trouble. So perhaps this was her job in these middle laps to make it hard. We saw her on the front earlier as well, actually. So she's doing some good work for the team here. Perhaps she's getting some more word off Lizzie to put the hammer down a little bit to test some more legs. But we could just see there the Colombian rider, I think, with a lot of bottles she's carrying there.
Yeah, she certainly is. Just riding up the outside. Definitely looks like she's got a couple of bidons there on domestic duties. As we see Melissa Lowther just at the back end of the bunch. Unsurprisingly, in fact, she put out that big effort getting across the gap to Sarah Penton earlier on before being reeled back in by the peloton. And that's the second feed zone there. They can be very, very chaotic places indeed, can't they? Quite a narrow section there for a feed zone. We've got the pits on the other side of the circuit. And as this is a longer circuit, there's a couple of opportunities for riders to take feeds. But if you're not going to want to take a bottle, you're best off moving over to the left-hand side, because feed zones, as we both know, can be quite problematic places to be.
All they can. All it takes is one person to miss a bottle and that to go on the floor. Then everyone else is trying to avoid that bottle, and there's swerves and there's bunny hops going on. So yeah, the best thing, if you don't want a bottle, don't get involved, don't get in the way. I've had times before when I've had to try and reach over somebody else to get to my soigneur, and it can be a bit carnage. And you know, if you can allocate one rider to get a load of bottles, you know, each lap it's their turn to get the bottle for the team leader. That's really useful. But yeah, you've got to keep drinking little and often, so you know it's a necessary part of the bike race. But similarly, to have 2 feet in the lap, make sure you're out the way when you don't want to be there.
Well, definitely the feed zone there we've just been through, and actually 3 riders have just drifted off the front. We missed them through the cover of the trees here. Back to the rear of the peloton now. A couple of Polish riders there at the back. Another one of these many technical parts, a very narrow part of the circuit here. Riders using this this small descent as an opportunity to get back on terms. It won't be long before they're on the foot slopes of the big climb itself. And that was the first little uncategorized climb. And again, it won't be very long before they're on the slopes of Salmon Hill. Interesting to see the composition of those 3 riders who've managed to just move clear. But again, the pace has really lifted now. Riders not willing, or riders and teams not willing to let any significant move go clear. I have a feeling there is just a few riders just off the front there. But again, now they've finished the descent, it spreads all across the road, and it is as you were.
Keep seeing Danny King at the front there, marking those Dutch riders. She's had really good presence at the front of the bunch, and I think Hannah Barnes as well in the middle of the screen. So again, a lot of British presence at the front of this peloton.
Well, just on the foot slopes, the primary slopes of Salmon Hill yet again. Still 90.3 kilometres to go in this race. It is going to be a real war of attrition, a real wearing down process. Several riders already in distress, struggling on this climb. We haven't even got to the steep part yet. Fair play to Mel Lowther there, number 42 at the back. She's already been in action for the Great Britain. Oh, and a crash on the right-hand side. A touch of wheels. One of the Polish riders there has calmed down. That is Małgorzata Jasinska, also one of the Norwegian locals there, tangled up in her bike. Never good to see, but thankfully she is up. Looks like the chain is on. Quite often when riders crash, the chain comes off and they're spinning air, but thankfully one of the motorcycle marshals helps push her back. Let's have a look at that again. I think, again, that was just a little bit of a lapse in concentration, Joe, and a touch of wheels. We do see that so often.
Yes, yeah, we do, and everyone was also adjusting for position as well. It's very easy to happen. I think that was Amber Nabin there from the America team that was just ahead of them. I think it was perhaps someone that hit her wheel, and she had to stop, but she didn't come down, but she's now got back on her bike and she's riding off again.
And that was Vita Hain of Norway. Not in the drink at the moment, not in the river. Vita Hain was one of the other riders that was slowed down, but a very brave and hardy soul taking a swim. Would you hazard a guess at the temperature of that particular fjord there, Joe? It's not something that I particularly like to be doing, despite the rather balmy and sunny weather we have today here in Bergen.
I'm well impressed with him. I'm always the sort of person that when I go on holiday, even if it's cold, I will swim in an outdoor pool, but this is something else. That is quite impressive, so yeah, well done to him.
It certainly is. Well, it looks like it's a game over there for Mel Lowther. She'll fight on gamely, just detached on the lower slopes of the climb here. The Norwegian rider who was caught up in that crash, Vita Hain, now back in contact. So solid ride by her. And meanwhile, this is the rear of the peloton, one of the riders that's just a little bit too far behind, being told by the judges, the commissaires, to pull out of the race. Generally, in the World Road Championships, there is a cut-off point. If a rider reaches a certain distance behind the peloton, they're then asked to leave the race, or they're removed from the race. And riders, generally speaking, will continue on for as long as they can. It's just in the nature of cyclists, isn't it? They generally just plug on and plug on. But for that rider, it is game over today as we head back to the front of the bunch. And it looks like one of the riders from Canada on the front, in the blue shoulders there. 2 riders from Canada on the front of the bunch, with just over 89 kilometres to go. And it is still as you were. Riders watching, waiting, biding their time. I mean, it does look, Joe, as if nothing is happening, but believe you me, there are 153 riders in this race. Therefore, there are 153 different stories. Well, there we go. We just saw Mel Lowther fighting again to get back in contact, yo-yoing at the moment. I think real testament to her strength of character. She's been out animated the race and is now struggling because of that effort, but she certainly won't give up, will she?
She won't. She has animated the race, so, well done to her. I'm really impressed that she was able to do that in her first World Championships and at such a young age as well. This experience will be so useful for her for the rest of her career. Now, I think, hang on as long as she can, give any help to her teammates if she can, and then, the race might be over for her, but she might carry on and stay in this bunch. That remains to be seen. But yeah, it's still Canada on the front of this bunch at the moment with 2 riders. Plus, I think I can see Eleanor Barker on the right of the screen and Alice Barnes just behind her.
Well, Canada have 6 riders in this race. Christy Lay, Leah Kirkman, very, very good rider indeed. Watch out for her at the back end of this race. Alison Jackson, Caroline Canuel as well. I think they are the 2 riders from Canada that I think we should keep a little bit of an eye on. And they're backed up by Lex Albrecht and Sarah Bergen. As again, the camera dwells on Mel Lowther. What a race she's having so far. And she, I can tell you, will not give up. Animated the race so far, but it's when you look, I mean, explain the difference. I mean, how much it takes out of you to sort of attack and be at the front of this race. Still got a fair distance to go, and the bunch look as if they're taking it easy, but they're setting a strong tempo here. And when you've been out on the attack, riding at or near threshold, it does take a remarkable amount out of you, especially such a young rider.
Definitely. So it wasn't just the time she was on her Roma, she would have been riding near her threshold, but also the time when she was with the Dutch rider and responding to those accelerations. She was in and out the saddle, putting out peak power again and again, and all that really saps your legs very, very quickly. So you'd be putting out, some high watts there. So yeah, that will take its toll, and that's understandable, and that's I guess the main nature of having a team in a race like this, because you do have runners that do sacrifice themselves early on, and other riders that look after themselves for the duration of the race, and it's those early riders that make the animation, that make the race exciting.
Exactly. One of the Russian riders just drifting backwards there was Anna Potokina. So as we said, riders in 1s and 2s gradually being detached, reducing the size slowly but surely of this peloton. And you can just tell, just by the shape and the form of some of the riders on the back, this is no easy pace that is being set. Clearly not a ferocious one, but one that will gradually burn the legs. It certainly won't be comfortable, and it's only sustainable. And I think this is why the World Road Championships and the classics and the longer races, they really suit a certain type of rider, a rider that has resilience, reserves. And of course, it's an endurance sport. And that's what being fit is all about. It's the ability to tolerate these repeated efforts as time goes on.
I think it's the patience as well. So you could be the fittest bike rider in the race, and that can often be frustrating if you feel early on that you want to go harder, you can smash this hill. It's about being patient and not playing your cards too early, not going too deep early on. And if the pace is a little bit slower, saying, OK, this is fine, and going with that and waiting till the time is right to launch your attack.
No, I think you are right, and I think we probably both learned as younger riders to see a little bit of a, I wouldn't exactly call a shoulder bar. It looked like there was another touch of wheels in the peloton there. A couple of riders nearly came to grief, a near miss there, but no near misses in terms of the way that the people of Bergen are celebrating this race. Absolutely wonderful to see. fully understandable why the camera from time to time is dwelling on the fans, because they make this occasion what it is. It would be nothing without the fans. A wonderfully organised week we've had so far. But no, patience, as you said, Joe, a real virtue. And when you're young, you express yourself, you don't fully understand how to kind of tap into the kind of strength that you've got. As soon as when you feel strong, you generally attack. And that's, I mean, that's what we saw in the junior women's race yesterday and in the men's junior race this morning. Aggressive from the off, because it takes a while, it takes a couple of years for you to kind of settle in terms of your temperament and your ability to distribute your effort out on the road.
Yeah, definitely. So when you're young, it's easy to get carried away and just go on the attack when you feel good. Equally, it's difficult to, when you're young, if you see someone else go on the attack and get a good gap, to not panic and to have the maturity to think it's okay, it's a long bike race. But I saw that yesterday in the junior girls race. There was attack quite early on. The gap went up to 42 seconds and the other runners didn't panic, and that was quite mature of them to do that, because I know when I was a junior, if a pre-race favourite got 42 seconds on that one, I would be panicking at that. So you do learn that with years, you learn with experience how long it takes to bring a break back and how long, you know, people can actually stay away for realistically. And, you know, experience always pays dividends.
No, you are right. I think I will echo your sentiments there. It took me a couple of years to kind of understand that I didn't need to sit on the front of the peloton and drag everybody back. I was a strong young rider, but yeah, I learnt the hard way. I lost a lot of races, but again, that is the beauty of cycling. So much to learn, and you never stop learning, do you? No matter how experienced you are, you always find a different situation out on the road. Each race unfolds in a different way, has a completely different narrative, and you find yourself in every single race in different situations from which you learn, and that is why I love cycling so much. Each race is different, and as I said before, 153 different stories here, 153 different sets of objectives. They'll play things out differently. Many of the riders, of course, will be riding to team orders, but that's what makes this sport so fascinating, so complex, and quite often so unpredictable.
Yeah, and especially with the World Championships. So other races, you might have the same course each year, the same circuit, or a very similar circuit each year. World Championships, completely different course each year. Last year, Qatar, pan flat, boiling hot. Here, very hilly, a bit cooler, and every year is going to be different. And I think that's what's so special about the World Championships as well. It's not always going to be the same format of race. Anything could happen, anything does happen, and the course, with the changing course as well, no one can quite predict how the races are going to run. And the junior girls go first. They went first yesterday. They're the first ones to test the water there. Everyone could have watched that, but even with that, every bike race could pan out differently here.
No, definitely. We've had some extremely exciting racing so far. And this, of course, the final weekend of what's been a wonderful week of racing here in Bergen. Still another 2 rainbow jerseys to be given out. One today, and of course, one tomorrow. As we see, I think it's Alice Barnes on the front there.
Yeah, Alice Barnes.
In that familiar light blue helmet of the Drop Cycling team. I must admit, I'm a big fan of the Drop Cycling team kit. That lovely pastel blue with those stripes. Of course, as you mentioned before, Alice will be joining her sister Hannah over at the Canyon SRAM team. A big step up for Alice, but she is a very classy rider in her own right.
She is. Some fantastic results this year, riding for Drops. But Drops have got a very interesting team. I like the idea of development. They've got a lot of young riders, and they're interested in themselves in growing as a team. They've just signed the American rider Taylor Wiles for next year, who's a big name rider for them to sign. And they're focused on development as well. They've got quite a lot of exciting prospects for the future, and they seem to be doing things right. So it, for me, is interesting to follow that team and to follow their progress each year, the more bike races they get invited to, and how they'll continue to progress, and who else they'll sign in the future.
No, definitely. They are a very interesting team indeed. As I say, with an eye for the future, developing riders. And one of the biggest wins of the year for the team would have been the opening stage of the Beanie Ladies Tour, which Alice took. And then went on to finish second overall. An outstanding ride by her. And I think that would have been one of the rides that took the eye of the management at Canyon SRAM to bring her across. But there she is, still in the front of the bunch, setting that tempo. In fact, several of the Great Britain riders now at the front. Danny King on the right-hand side there. I don't know whether she was speaking into a radio or just adjusting the chin straps. There's Lizzie Dignan as well, not too far behind, just sat on the wheel of Danny King. And it looks to me, Joe, as if Danny King's job is to stick to Lizzie and vice versa like glue.
Yes, it looks like they've had that conversation. Looks like they're thinking, right, you look after me. Danny's a very clever bike rider, very experienced, very skillful as well, knows her way around a bunch, so she's a good wheel for Lizzie to follow confidently and have confidence in that teammate.
Definitely, if you can have confidence in your teammates, I think that's another few percentage points on top of your morale, and that's why it's important to keep communicating. And a good teammate won't just often react to what is asked of them. They'll actually be proactive as well. They go up to their team leader, ask them how they are, is there anything they can do? Because you do get protected riders who often don't actually say too much. So you can have riders of, let's not say lesser ability, but with a different objective within the race, who provide a really important support mechanism to the lead riders to shield them from the wind. Often not a lot is said, but it's just by their very actions out on the road, innately shielding them from the wind, shutting gaps down when they're not asked to do so. So valuable. And at the moment, Danny King riding a superb race, but still a lot of racing to be done. 83.2 kilometres here to go in Bergen. So we have some cobbled action here midway through this Elite Women's World Road Race Championships. Germany on the attack. Alice Barnes in close attendance, not happy to assist with the pacemaking. She's got one instruction, I'd imagine that is to look after Lizzie Deignan, but a few little fishes now appearing in the peloton, and look who's close to it. Unsurprisingly, the orange of the Netherlands bringing back a little bit of order, but Alice Barnes very aggressive here.
Yeah, Alice Barnes very aggressive. Danny King just sitting there, followed there possibly by Chantal Black of the Dutch team, and now an American rider as well. So once again, brilliant to see so many British riders at the front of this bike race.
Yeah, they really are riding extremely well. And Lauda went out on the attack early on. And also, we saw Hayley Simmons riding hard at the front of the bunch. But the first time we've really seen the Dutch applying the pressure, and they have a mightily strong team. Many of the riders from the Dutch team will be teammates or are teammates of Lizzie Deignan, and she knows how dangerous they are. There's a real pressure being applied here at the top end of the circuit. This is the most northerly point they're approaching now before they swing back round for the last 3 Ks run into the line. So the race really starting to warm up and become animated now.
It is, and it's all strung out, and there's some gaps developing here in the bunch, so I'm sure they'll be closed quite quickly. That's quite a gap there, but you can see the pressure's really on here. This is all, well, mainly Alice Barnes putting the pressure on the whole bunch of the Women's Road Race World Championships.
Now she's looking very strong. Attack through the cobbled sections, now taking her own opportunity to go clear. Just goes over those couple of sleeping policemen. They break the rhythm so much, but just heading now into Sandviken, and then she'll swing left. This is the left-hander. Thankfully it's dry today. Cuts the apex of that corner, accelerates out, putting the power through the bike, stringing out the bunch in the process. Just look at how long the peloton is now. Still lots of riders in contention, and when they cross the line on this next occasion, we'll be halfway through this race. But great riding there from Alice Barnes, but what a sight to behold that is. The whole field strung out in one long ribbon of colour here in Bergen. But some solid riding there by Alice Barnes. She looks absolutely inspired today.
She does, and the riders at the back of that bunch will have a hard job now. Every time you go around the corner at the wrong side of those splits, you've got to accelerate really hard just to stay with the riders in front of you.
Well, the rider's gone over the top. Alex Barnes is now back in the peloton. She's looking over her shoulder in the blue helmet. One of the Norwegian riders has now taken the opportunity to go clear. Hands on the hoods there, getting in an aero position. She now moves clear. We'll get her identified as soon as we can. And meanwhile, the bunch trapping along at a real fast rate of knots now, heading in towards the finish, as we get a lovely glimpse of the colour here in Bergen. Such a wonderful place, picture postcard beauty, especially in this sort of sunlight. And back into the shade, still the solo Norwegian rider out in front, but it's good to see so much attacking racing still, with half of this race still to go.
Yeah, and good for the Norwegian team as well in their home World Championships to be putting such a good show on the front here. So right from lap 1, we've seen Norwegian presence at the front of the bunch, and now going on the attack as well. She will love all the crowd support that she's going to be getting on this lap.
She certainly will. And the responses come from behind. The Netherlands lead the chase in the orange. Swung to the other side of the road. tentative lead now out in front, but as you said, she'll be urged on. Takes a quick glance over her shoulder. Presses on regardless. Could this be the catalyst to a good move that goes clear? That is why at this stage of the race, riders are willing to take the chance to attack, because you could end up being on the right side of the race. I think at this stage of the race, Joe, these aren't just speculative attacks. These are attacks that could actually significantly change the shape of the race.
They could, and equally, if you manage to get away in a break and that gets a half-decent gap, even if it hasn't got the favourites in, when the favourites do start attacking and they can come up to you, you're already there. You're there ready and waiting. So the best example I've seen of that recently was in Tour de Yorkshire, where Danny King was in the early breakaway, and then we saw Lizzie Diamond and Anna van der Breggen come across, and then they pretty much went straight past, and Danny was able to stay with them. So by being in that early break, she put herself up the road in the position to get with some of the pre-race favourites. So that might be some riders' agenda here, to get themselves up the road before all the fireworks really start later on.
I think that was Marianne Vos that just went off the front there in the bunch. We still had this solo rider from Norway out in front on her own. And then there was another, I think it is Marianne Vos, just on the left-hand side there with the black helmet, rides for the WM3 team. That characteristic little ponytail, I think that is her. 3 times world champion, deciding to inject a little bit of colour, a little bit of pace into this race. Still another 2 hours of racing. And this rider cheered on by her home crowd. This is going to be a very, very big moment, regardless of what happens next. Rounds that corner, and the finishing straight opens up in front of her in a blaze of colour and sunshine. And there's the bunch rounding the corner behind. A nice drop down into the finish before that little bit of a kick up to the line. And now the Italian team now take to the front with 4 laps to go. So 4 laps to go, 2 hours and 5 minutes of racing. And Joe, the bunch look like at the moment they're pretty happy for that breakaway to go clear. So the bunch still all together, save for one rider. A little speculative attack on the top part of the circuit. That nasty little speed bump there as they go into the tunnel. But thankfully, the tunnel on this tunnel is very, very well lit. We were just talking earlier in one of the breaks about how difficult it can be when you're going into tunnels on a stage race in particular, when they're very, very dark, that contrast of light and shade. And it is Suzanne Andersen out in front for Norway. Sarah Roy 10 seconds further back, followed by Leah Kirkman. So Sarah Roy is our rider out in front at the moment, flying the flag for Norway. So she's opened up a nice little gap here. A couple of little counter-attacks to try and bring her back, came to nothing. I think riders looking at who's out in front, maybe not too perturbed by the Norwegian rider. But it's interesting to see the Dutch really on the offensive, trying to sort of bring that back. And you should just see the rider moving up on the outside there. That is Marianne Vos in that black helmet with the green bike. Thankfully for us, easy to pick out. But Marianne Vos looking like she's in pretty good form. Of course, won the European Championships just a week back. And again, another very, very vitally important part of the Dutch armoury. Definitely.
When Marianne Vos is a rider that you're listing as perhaps a domestique for the day, you know you've got a super strong team. Has had, you know, her palmarès, you know, we'd be here ages if we were listing all of her race results. Incredible, incredible rider. And so much power when she attacks, like her jump to get away from the bunch is incredible. And I think that is so useful, you know, even if you're not the strongest bike rider in the race, if you can get that gap, makes holding it that little bit easier. So to see her at the front of the bunch going for attacks, everyone is thinking we're not going to let her get away.
No, she's a very, very dangerous rider indeed. Hunting her 4th world road title, of course, has won on cyclocross as well. So a very, very skillful rider. She's had her problems with injuries over the last couple of years, but an amazing record in the Women's World Road Championship. Just looking back through the results, as well as her 3 victories between 2007 and 2011. She was silver on 5 occasions back-to-back. It shows the tenacity, will and drive. She won in 2006. And again, was second, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. and then went on to win in 2012 and 2013. So a quite remarkable record in these championships. So much experience as well to pass on to the younger riders in the squad, and she's still only 30.
Definitely. In 2006, I believe she was a first-year senior that year. So her first ever World Road Race Championships, taking the win. That is incredible.
That certainly is. So Andersen is the rider out in front. Suzanne Andersen of Norway. A counter-attack here for one of the riders for Germany. Big stinging attack, but look who's responding. It's Marianne Vos again. Clearly her instruction is to try and bring back any of these dangerous moves. The Dutch seemingly want to try and keep everything together. So some interesting racing here, Joe. You've got Suzanne Andersen out in front, but Marianne Vos really on the offensive, neutralising every attack that they deem to be even a hint of danger.
She is. She's doing a brilliant job there of just closing the gaps to anybody trying to make any form of attack. So there's 15 seconds, well 14 seconds now for the Norwegian rider, so she's not got much to play with. We've seen a few people try to make counter-attacks, but the Dutch, and particularly Marianne Vos, are just closing those down. Still pleased to see some GB riders at the front of the bunch. But here, I think this is Hayley Simmons come back to the team car.
Yeah, Hayley Simmons drops back to have a little bit of a word. Not too sure what is exactly going on. It could be literally just having a chat with the manager, the direct sportif, about the situation on the road. It doesn't look as if she's getting any mechanical assistance, but quite often you will see the riders calling up the team car. They're allowed to call up the team car. The team car will then move from its position in the convoy to directly behind the commissaire's car to allow the riders to have a little bit of a chat. But so important. I'm not too sure actually if the riders seem to have radios here.
Yeah, I think they do have radios, but I think as well sometimes maybe it's easier to go back and talk, and if a rider for the GB team like Hayley can go and do that, let's say someone like Lizzie the job of going all the way to the back of the bunch and then having the effort to get back on. Even though the car does come up to the front, it still is an effort to then work your way back through the bunch. So if Hayley can do that job, that will be useful to everybody else.
Definitely, and normally when you drop back, even if it's just to have a face-to-face chat with the team manager, generally you'll bring back a couple of bottles as well, a couple of gels, some food for the riders. As yet again we hit this short, sharp climb. Almost an hors d'oeuvre before the climb of Salmon Hill, and that was another rider being pulled out. But still Suzanne Andersen out in front. Very, very slender lead indeed. I think it's under 10 seconds now. We can just see by the gear she's turning there, Joe, and the speed that she's going. This little climb of only about 200 or 300 metres, that is really going to start to sting and sap the strength from these riders' legs.
It is really going to be feeling it now this far into the race. So well done for still going on the attack here, but we can see the bunch are getting a bit more active. They're sort of thinking, let's ramp this up now, and I think each lap we're going to see faster times.
I think we are. The speed gradually ratcheting up, as it always does in the World Championships, but an absolutely fascinating race so far. You can almost sense the palpable tension in the peloton, the different strategies at play, and the Dutch team come into this race with very, very high hopes and a ridiculously strong team, neutralising any attack. They're not letting anything go at all, even one rider. It doesn't look as if they're particularly happy to even let one rider bridge across that could potentially coalesce and form into something dangerous. They're shutting everything down.
Yeah, exactly, and it remains to be seen if any of them are going to launch any big attacks themselves. We did see one earlier, but it looks like they are waiting for the second half of the race before they go on the attack. So they're keeping everybody else together, but when will they actually start to make their own moves?
Yeah, well, that's Martina Ritter of Austria, one of 3 Austrian riders. She also rides for the Drops team, and Hayley Simmons has just got back to the back of the peloton after having a bit of a chat with the GB management in the team car. And a gel was taken there by Suzanne Andersen. Again, we talked about it earlier on. So important that these riders keep feeding. Did you like gels, or were you a person who liked real food, or did you have a little bit of a mix, or did you save certain things towards the end of the race?
Definitely a combination. So on the track, love my gels. Really happy with gels. That made me happy. On the road, definitely some more normal food, especially earlier in the race. Save some gels towards the end, but I think actually eating something like a rice cake, you know, it's a lot better, especially when you've got a long bike race, you know, 3+ hours. That would be a lot of gels, and that would be quite tough on your stomach. So especially if you've got a stage race as well, you're going to need to think about your nutrition throughout the whole race. And if you start feeling sick on day 1, that's going to do you no favours come day 5, 6 and 7. So I think a bit of both always made me happy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was always a bit of well, in the early days we didn't have gels. We just had whatever you could get your hands on: cakes, sandwiches, cheese and jam. And obviously things have moved on. Technology in the sport has moved on across the board, including, of course, nutrition. So many of the gels that you get. The good thing about the gels, they're so convenient, and they're digested and absorbed by your system very, very quickly. But again, you have to strike a balance, especially towards the back end of a long race when your stomach is essentially empty. They can go through your system very, very quickly. But I think the best way of feeding yourself through a race is a nice mix, using the gels and the sports bars as a bit of an even mix with fluids and, of course, real food as well. As we see a little bit of a split here occurring. 6 or 7 riders, even more actually going clear. I think an indication that there's now some really tired legs in the bunch.
Definitely. So that's Ellen van Dijk of the Dutch team that just went across up to the Norwegian rider there, and we've seen that force a bit of a split in the bunch. And there's a few riders that have been a bit caught out and will now be chasing up to bring all that back together.
Well, the Canadians also in force there. But one of the riders that's just gone clear, this is Amy Pieters of the Netherlands. A big attack on the right-hand side. This is an attack with commitment, out of the saddle, turning a big gear. Very explosive attack now from Pieters herself. A very, very class rider indeed. Also rides on the Boels-Dolmans team, giving you an indication of how strong that team is. This is a good attack here by Pieters.
It is. So she's won a stage of the OVO Women's Tour this year. So she's had a good season, as well as some team time trial wins with the Boels-Dolmans team. Probably more of a domestic role here with the Dutch squad today, which is saying something given how strong she is as a rider herself. But here, a big, strong attack and opens up a big gap. But there is a British rider there. Is that Hannah Barnes there?
This Hannah Barnes is along there with Rachel Nayland of Australia. So a little Commonwealth duo getting across the gap to Amy Pieters. 26 years of age is Pieters. Very classy bike rider indeed. And last performances, she was 9th overall in the Boels Rentals Ladies Tour. Hatful of top 10s. And the Boels-Dolmans team, of course, won the team time trial at the Crescent Vargata, and she was a silver medalist in the team time trial. So already a medalist this year at these World Championships, and looking good. So interesting to see the Dutch team on the offensive, forcing the other teams to chase. But great to see Barnes in the mix there, and it looks like they've now got across that gap.
This is an interesting group. I was waiting for a Dutch rider to really make a big move and see when they were going to do that, because they have been chasing a few breaks already. But now, big attack by Amy Pieters, and really good group there. Australian rider, British rider, Dutch rider. That takes the pressure off the other British girls and the other Australian girls.
Well, these sharp accelerations on these rises are causing a few riders to lose contact, one of which back then, Joe, was Julian Dorp. One of the Belgian favourites. We knew this course might be just a little bit too hilly for her, and she is already in a state of distress. But Barnes rolls through, looking very, very good there on the tops, pedaling extremely smoothly. This is a very, very good group that's going clear now. And the Americans, sensing a little bit of danger, trying to send somebody across the gap.
Yep, American rider trying to get across the gap there, but this is a great ride back on the Barnes as well. So earlier in her career, she's probably labelled as a sprinter, and she's been known for winning some races as bunch sprints, but now really developing into a great all-rounder. 9th on Tuesday in the time trial at the World Championships.
That's a superb ride, wasn't it? I mean, I think a bit of a surprise for all of us there. It just shows how well, sorry to cut across you there, how mature she is, and also how rounded a rider she is now.
She is becoming a really well-rounded rider, like I say, not... well, very, very fast finish still, but that's not her only power there. She's, you know, really strong in the breakaways, really strong time trial rider. So this is a dangerous group that's got away here.
Well, Hannah Barnes, part of that leading group of 3, former British road race champion, of course. The current British champion, of course, Lizzie Deignan, multiple champion. So great position for the Great Britain team. Barnes leads, Pieters around the corner, and now they are onto the slopes of Salmon Hill yet again. This time up, it is really going to start hurting. 19 seconds they have over the bunch. This is a very, very powerful group that is going clear. There's the bunch just rounding that corner before the road kicks up. Interesting times here in the Women's Elite Road Race Championships of the world. So the bunch round the corner. Who is going to do the chasing? And there it is. There is your answer, Joe. USA on the front.
Yeah, America team on the front. Danny King nicely sat there in second or third wheel. Brilliant position there for her. She can cover anybody that attacks and tries to bridge across. So really, really impressed with the British girls in this race so far. They always seem to be at the head of the field. I've seen everybody doing a good job at some point in this race.
Yeah, we've been very, very active on the offensive, making sure that Lizzie Deignan is looked after, but also willing to go in the moves as well. An extremely good team performance by Great Britain, and the lead holding steady here at the front. Rachel Neylan again looking very, very strong. Just look at her poise on the bike. They're hardly moving any of the top part of her body.
Rachel Neylan, a previous medalist at the World Championships 2012, I believe she got the silver medal. So again, knows her way around a World Championship road race.
Well, she certainly does, and not afraid to go on the offensive. Full complement of Australian riders here, as we mentioned before. Now it's Germany forced to do the chasing, and the gap was going out 21 seconds, and the pressure at the front of the bunch is meaning that a lot of riders are in distress. Albertura Ribes, and then also number 28 there, that's Elisa Longo-Borghini. That is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, we didn't expect to see her struggling. She's known for being a very good climber. She was third at La Course this year with the mountaintop finish at Col d'Izoard. So perhaps not her day. You know, we've said earlier, sometimes you just have bad days on the bike and you just can't explain it. But yeah, unusual to see her in that position at this stage of a race.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise. I don't know whether she had a few problems. We saw her uncharacteristically looking rather ragged on the bike a few kilometres ago. And she is the time trial and road race champion of Italy, and took out the Strada Bianca earlier in the year. And that is a very, very hilly race, of course, on the white roads of Tuscany. But Elisa Longo-Borghini not looking particularly good at the moment. But one rider that is looking good is Hannah Barnes on the front for Great Britain. The gap has come down a little bit. 3 teams have been assisting with the chasing. Germany on the front at the moment in that white kit. Now America, the USA coming back to the front as well. But look at the riders from the Netherlands in the orange, and also the Danny King. She's ridden a superb race so far, never far from the front at all, marking, looking after Lizzie Deignan. Great riding by the GB team. But the USA again sensing the danger out in front.
Yeah, I think that might be Katie Hall there for the America team. Very strong climber, and I think she was second this year at the Tour of California. So very strong, you know, when she gets upset on that climb, she's immediately opens up a gap, and the Dutch have seen that threat and immediately closed that.
Well, another couple of riders, Taylor Wiles in a little bit of difficulty at the back there as well, and also Romy Kasper, who's on the offensive a little bit earlier on. Still a long way to go in this race, 11 seconds at the lead. Another one of the German riders struggling to hold on to the wheel, that's Claudia Lichtenberg. She's a very, very good climber indeed. As we head over to the viewpoint of Mr. Polar Bear. And there's the bunch. What a view. Neylan swings off. Peters rolls through. So Peters pedaling that high cadence. But the bunch aren't too far behind now. They know the strength of this group out in front. Not just 3 very strong riders, Joe, but 3 very, very strong nations with strong teams in terms of depth.
Yeah, exactly. So there'll be three lots of teams sat on that bunch at the moment, quite happy that they've got runners up the road, and it's up to the other nations to police that gap or to bring it back. But just hovering around 9 seconds now, they're not letting them get very far. They all know that these riders are world-class bike riders and a threat.
Well, they certainly do. You can tell just by the shape and the form on the bike of many of these riders. This climb of Salmon Hill really starting to take its toll. Numerous riders getting detached. Another one of the Italians there, Sofia Bertizzolo, starting to struggle with the pace. So the racing has really started to heat up now. 10 seconds as we just come to the top of Salmon Hill. Will we see some organised chasing? Still our 3 riders out in front. So Amy Peters of the Netherlands, Rachel Neylan of Australia, and Hannah Barnes of Great Britain lead the Elite Women's World Championships here with just over 67 kilometres still to go. They went clear just before the climb of Salmon Hill. 3 very strong riders indeed. The race has really picked up in pace over the last couple of laps. Had an early instigator in the form of Sarah Penton of Sweden. She was joined shortly afterwards by Mel Lowther of Great Britain, who forged on alone. Then they were all brought back, and for a couple of laps there was a bit of a hiatus. The peloton stayed together, but now we have 3 classy bike riders out in front. from three of the strongest teams. And there is a rear view of Lizzie Deignan on the right-hand side, who's ridden a great race so far. Danny King not too far behind, almost acting as a super domestic today.
Yeah, Danny King been very well placed in the bunch the whole race. Really impressed with her, as have all the British riders. They seem to all be in the right place at the right time and having a really good presence on all the attacks so far. So that's been really good. A team we've not talked much about so far is the Danish team. I just saw a rider there. I think that was Cecilia Ludwig, who is a potential favourite for this race. Oh, and now we've got a crash.
Oh, a big crash here. Several riders have come down. A couple of riders from the United States, Italy also down, Germany in the mix. One of the Belgians is down. Also one of the riders from the Netherlands, who's that Chantal Black, one of the key riders from the Netherlands squad. So Chantal Black is down. One of the Canadian riders also has come down in that crash. That's Christy Lay. So a nasty crash on the corner. It looks like it is. Who's that rider from America also on the floor? Never very good to see at all. I don't know if
that's Megan Guarnier.
I think it is Megan Guarnier, looking in a state of distress. Never good to see at all. This is not very nice at all. Number 26, also there, Cecchini, one of the Italian favourites. We've had a nasty crash here on this bend on the descent of Salmon Hill. Megan Guarnier of the United States on the floor there. Three riders from the Italian squad also down. West Germany crashed as well, so never good to see at all. It was just on the apex of that bend. Don't know whether it was a touch of wheels or somebody's wheel just went away from them, but some real key riders, unfortunately, Joe, they're taken out of the race by the looks of things.
Yeah, I just saw Alyssa Balsamo there from the Italian team, junior world champion last year. She was caught up in that crash. Ella Barker was stuck behind it, but I don't think she came down. I think she was back on the bike quite quickly.
Well, that was, it just happened before they even started to drift left. I don't know whether somebody touched a wheel or a wheel went away, but a completely dry bit of road. Three Italian riders, and still Megan Guarnier there on the floor. Thankfully, she's got some assistance there. Let's hope she is okay. But meanwhile, up ahead, completely unaware of the crash that happened at the head of the peloton, in fact, behind, is our three riders out in front. That's Rachel Neylan in the white, green and yellow of Australia. Hannah Barnes is there for Great Britain, just taking a feed there on the right-hand side. And the final rider in this trio up in front with the lead now 34 seconds is Amy Peters, and I think the gap has gone out because it was Italy on the front who were setting the pacemaking, as were the United States. And as those riders have now come down, the lead for our three riders out in front has gone out.
Yeah, so United States losing a key rider there, Megan Guarnier, previous bronze medalist back in 2015 in this event. Bad day for her, so that's a real shame to see. But the breaker carrying on up to 38 seconds now, and it's in their interest to keep working well together. It's up to them to maintain that gap. They're still doing great jobs for their teams by being up there. It takes the pressure off those other riders, but the rest of the bunch are just taking it a bit easier now through the feed zone. I think that's Danny King on the front there, just taking a bottle.
One of the South African riders also up in the mix there, I think Ashley Moolman-Passio. And meanwhile, our three riders really working well as a unit. And that crash, sadly, has taken the impetus out of the chase behind. But because we're deep into the race, and nutrition so vital for these riders, unsurprisingly, most key riders using the opportunity to go through the feed zone to make sure they've got enough nutrition on board. And also to assess the situation as well, because riders would have seen that there had been a big crash. As we see another counter-attack, looks like one of the riders from Sweden going on the offensive as well.
Ukraine, I think, there.
Well spotted. So Ukraine on the attack now. And Switzerland also trying to shut things down. So Shakel now on the offensive, moving clear. And the Italians now, well, it's not the Italians, sorry, the Swiss riders trying to shut things down. Americans at the fore again. This is one of the riders that was taken down in that crash, Elisa Balsamo. Lost about 30 or 40 seconds, and just looking at her pace, it doesn't look as if she's going to get back in contact, but she, I know, will fight gamely on. Always so sad to see these crashes, but they are a part and parcel of racing, but never good to see at all. But this group at the moment, Joe, working very well indeed. And three, I mean, when you look at the composition of this group, when you're talking about favourites for the race,
any one of these riders could have been an outside favourite for this race. This is an extremely strong move that's now gone clear.
It is. So like I said, Rachel Naylor, previous World Championship medalist. Amy Peters, incredibly strong rider, already plenty of wins this year. And Hannah Barnes as well, already had some wins this year, stayed with the Giro Rosa back in July. So some very strong riders, and having a group of 3, that's quite a nice group to work together with. I think, you know, a big group, there's always danger of people sitting on. Any less is not really enough, but 3, there's no hiding really. You can't really get away with sitting on in this group. They should be working together nicely.
Well, Great Britain have a 7 strong. The Netherlands have a full complement as well, as do Australia. So these are 3 teams represented in this front group, and 3 of the strongest teams in the race. That's going to have a significant effect on the resources left to chase as well. The peloton hasn't dramatically thinned down, but there's certainly less riders in the bunch, partly due to the attritional style of racing here, riders being detached on the climbs on this particular circuit. Then, of course, the crash taking out several key riders. But one of the main teams that were chasing on the front, Italy, lost 3 riders in that crash, one of which they're trying gamely to get back in contact, but that is going to really affect what is happening behind. But still the United States are chasing. The rider from the Ukraine, it looks like it's one of the riders rides for drops, actually, who's just riding through now. But Belgium also represented for the first time near the front as well. And there's Lizzie Deignan just rolling through, not far away from the wheel of Danny King.
Yeah.
They've almost been Siamese twins today in this peloton.
They have, and I think there was Katie Hall again for the USA at the front of the bunch. So USA are always having a strong presence there, so perhaps Corinne Rivera is feeling good. We've unfortunately seen Megan Garnier go down, but they've still got Corinne Rivera, who is a rider that a lot of people have been talking about a lot this year.
Yeah, we're a definite threat today. So unsurprisingly, the United States making sure that they're at the head of affairs, neutralising any of these dangerous attacks. But they've got a lot of work to do if they want to bring this break back. Meanwhile, Chantal Black, a victim of that crash on the descent. And this is one of the back marker groups coming back, trying to get back in through the peloton. I'd say they've got the back of the convoy in sight, so at least 15 riders here that were taken out by that crash. A couple of back markers as well. I did see Elena Cecchini in that group as well.
And Alyssa Longo-Borghini as well for Italy. She was the rider on the front setting the pace. You know, she's the national champion from Italy, and a rider that we all thought could be a favourite today. So she seems to be in some trouble, but she is working hard to get back. She's definitely not giving up yet.
She isn't at all. Maybe she's trying to empty the tank for Elena Cecchini. Cecchini, I think, is in the better form, because Lisa Longo-Borghini was definitely having difficulty on the climb. Managed to get back over the top, but perhaps she's thinking, if I can do something in this race, is at least try and get Cecchini back in the peloton. And we quite often see that, even when a rider's hope of even finishing the race is gone, what they'll generally do is turn their attention, turn their effort to trying to make a difference for a teammate as well.
Definitely. So road cycling is a team sport, so if you're not having a good day, or if you know that you've not got much left, you can say to your teammate, what can I do? What can I do to help now? Tell me what to do. And you can use that last bit of energy you've got to put them in a better position, or to launch them into attack, or whatever it is that they need you to do.
And now it's Cecchini herself who's driving on the front of this group behind. The group that you're seeing on your screen is around 20 or 30 seconds behind the bunch. So desperately trying to get back into contact. The Italians lost 3 riders in that crash, but they're all back up and riding, and they're leading this group to try and get back into contact. And the gap that you're seeing on the front of the screen there is 31 seconds from the bunch to our 3 leaders. We're back up in front to our 3 leaders. A reminder for you, the rider in the front, just swinging off, having taken her turn at the front from the Netherlands, is Amy Peters. Just rolling through, Rachel Naylor of Australia. And the 3rd rider, compromising our lead group, is Hannah Barnes of Great Britain. Looking very, very good indeed is Barnes, the former British road champion, riding for Canyon SRAM. The British team riding superbly so far. Thankfully, they've avoided the crashes so far. It was a nasty crash on the descent of Salmon Hill. But they're rounding the top corner now, heading back into the headwind on the approach to the finish, where they'll get 3 laps to go. So we're really getting into the challenging part of this race, and without a shadow of a doubt, Joe, the back end of this race, I do expect that this, as you put it, this attritional style of racing to continue. We'll get an even more whittled down field But then when will we see the big favourites start to unleash things? When will they go on the offensive? As we just drop a little bit further down now. This is Alice Barnes, ridden a great aggressive race so far, just suffering a little bit on this climb, but she has been one of the main animators, and her riding off the front has meant that Lizzie Deignan has been able to relax a little bit. No need to actually put any troops on the front.
She has ridden really well. It's been amazing to see so many British riders off the front of the World Championship road race this year. So well done to Alice for, you know, getting herself up the front, getting involved in those attacks. Looks like her job might be done for today. It is a long bike race, and I think the real favourites will be glad it is this long and this hard, because it will wear everybody down lap by lap. Every time up this hill will hurt everybody.
Yeah, well, that's Emilie Moberg moving through there for Norway, and this little group of riders that's just off the back of the group, using this descent to try and get back into contact. Alice Barnes just on the back there. It looks like they will get back on, but it won't be long before the road kicks up again, and we have the lower part of Salmon Hill to climb. It's always desperate, isn't it, when you get detached on a climb, manage to work your way back into the bunch, only to hit the slopes of another climb and get detached again. For a lot of riders for the next few kilometres, it's going to be yo-yo time. But meanwhile, the lead has yo-yoed a little bit. Only 20 seconds for our three riders out in front, as the shadows become a little bit longer now, heading deep into the afternoon here in Norway. And what a beautiful day it's been. An action-packed race so far, which is only just now coming to the boil. And the United States have been one of the teams that have definitely felt that these riders out in front are a danger.
Just seen Ashley Moolman-Pasio moving to the front there. I'm expecting some attacks from her, but it looks like a Swedish rider is going on the attack now.
Yeah, one of the Swedes just rising out of the saddle, attacking on the lower slopes of the climb. Again, putting Alice Barnes yo-yoing again. Look at her fighting gamely to stay in contact. This is the lower part of the climb of Salmon Hill. It then flattens to kick up again. And as we mentioned at the start of the programme, the climb itself categorised as 6.4% over 1.5 kilometres, but the climb itself goes on for well over 4 kilometres with that little false flat in between. So it really is a significant climb. And there we go, the illustration on your right-hand side, the blue dot representing our leaders, the green dot, the peloton, and not a very big gap at all, but holding steady at 20 seconds as Amy Peters takes to the front. I wonder what the big favourites are starting to think now, because what we see in the World Championships is riders leaving it very, very late, and because of the distance here, I think riders are not going to be afraid of the distance. I think they're just going to be a little bit cautious of the distance to make sure they don't get things wrong in terms of timing. United States still riding tempo on the front of the group. Well, there's the bunch just rolling through. In the centre of your screen there is Lizzie Deignan, former world road champion, current British road champion. He's had a torrid time of it over the last couple of weeks. Won the GP Plouay in dominant fashion in France a few weeks ago, and then sadly had to have her appendix out. A real spanner in the works in terms of her preparation for this race, but has ridden a consummate race so far. And again, she has nothing to lose, and at the moment is racing like she actually really wants to try and do something in this race. Hasn't shied away. Got some great teamwork by the rest of the Great Britain team, and looking good at the moment.
She is looking good. So we've got on the front here Lauren Stevens of the USA team. So once again, now we've got two USA riders on the front. We just had the one before, but they are showing some intent here. That they've obviously got some faith in Corinne Rivera, because they're working so hard. It is really good to see the GB riders riding sensibly. You know, we talked about the distance of the race, and it is going to be long, it is going to be tough, but that no one will really fear that. The big favourites will relish that, but they'll also respect it, and they'll know that going too hard early on, you know, they don't want to use too much energy early on. They want to save themselves. Interesting rider that has got her way to the front now is Ashley Moolman-Pasio for South Africa. You can see her there in the green and yellow kit with the red helmet. Had a medal already this week in the team time trial for Cervelo Bigla, and I'm expecting to see her go on the attack. She's normally a very aggressive rider, and she's worked her way up into wheel 4 now, so we'll see if she can do anything on this climb.
Yeah, she's a very, very classy climber indeed. Looking good, sat in 4th wheel, as you said. But the Americans really bringing this gap down now, 14 seconds, so they've taken 6 seconds on the lower part of Salmon Hill, riding with real determination. I can also see Pauline Ferrand-Prévot sat about 6th or 7th wheel, sat on the wheel of one of the Australian riders, the former world road champion, of course. He's had a very light road season this year, so one thing's for sure, what we do see at this time of the year, many riders are a little bit fatigued just by the sheer length of the season, but Pauline will be one of the riders I'd imagine that is relatively fresh. So that's, although she has had a distinct lack of road racing, she'll certainly be fresh in terms of not being tired coming into this race, which could prove to be an advantage to her as we head into the latter stages of this race.
Yes, it's not just the days of bike racing in your legs, but all the travel that's associated with that as well. So these road riders will spend so many days, you know, in airports, travelling around, all around Europe and also across the US for various different races. So all that takes its toll, and by the time you get to the end of the season, a good rider will have probably planned out a mid-season break. So they will have had a little bit of time off, perhaps in late June, early July of the season, if they want to peak at this race. But having a bit of a lighter race programme isn't always going to be a bad thing, because, like I say, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, very experienced rider, knows what she's doing, and perhaps a bit less time travelling throughout the summer will put her in a fresher position for this bike race.
Well, definitely, she certainly looks comfortable. Just saw her midway through the bunch, just drop down a little bit on the climb. And what a reception these riders are getting here. 10 seconds it is to our leaders. An absolutely wonderful crowd here, urging on these riders. Swedish fans and Norwegian fans in perfect harmony on this climb. And a few of the riders really starting to feel the bite of Salmon Hill. That's Romy Kasper. She's one of the German riders who's been yo-yoing, and it looks as if the junction is about to be made. Hannah Barnes, Amy Peters and Rachel Neyland about to be caught by the peloton.
Eleanor Barker going for the counter-attack here. Eleanor Barker's accelerated away from the bunch, away from those American riders. She's there in the black helmet and the red bike, and she's coming up to the bunch now, and it looks like she's going to go straight on.
Well, great riding here by Eleanor Barker. But just look at the way she fluidly pedalled across the gap, didn't get out of the saddle to attack, full of confidence there, pedaling a really low gear, nice high cadence, has drawn clear of the bunch, goes straight to the front of this group. So a little bit of a surprise glance there from Rachel Neyland of Australia, straight onto the wheel. So now we have two riders from Great Britain in the front group. Again, all plays into the hands of Lizzie Deignan, sat comfortably in the back and puts pressure on the other teams. This is a fascinating situation playing out. Still America driving from behind. This is fascinating stuff. I mean, we'd said it again, this is remarkable riding by the British team, galvanising around their leader.
It is, and despite having still a relatively young team, some amazing riding them by them here. So Eleanor Barker, although they're still very young, already a senior world champion this year in the points race at the Track World Championships, Olympic champion back from Rio 2016 in the team pursuit. But for her to see her at the head of the World Championship road race this year, of really only half a season of road racing, having done the track in the early part, this is incredible.
Well, she's only 23 years of age. It's a limited race schedule this year, but fourth in the British Road Race Championships, an indicator of the class of this rider. She sits at the back of this group now. On the front, driving hard, Amy Peters of the Netherlands, just rounding the corner a few seconds behind. Still the bunch being led by the Stars and Stripes of the United States of America. And now just under 50 kilometres to go. It won't be long before we crest the top of Salmon Hill. Two more ascents of this climb to come. An absolutely fascinating day's racing so far. It's at a real slow burn, things really hotting up, that peloton being reduced by the increasing speed lap by lap.
Eleanor Barker's looking quite comfortable there. She's closed that gap and she's got herself in that group. Interesting tactics here by the GB team. So they've now got two riders in that group, both very young riders, but both class riders in their own right. So it's up to the rest of the nations now to decide what they're going to do about this. They've got them just in their sights, but they're not quite closing that gap.
Well, quite clearly the United States, as you said before, showing their colours, trying to bring things back. You'd imagine for Corinne Rivera, they have lost Megan Gardner, sadly, to that crash about a lap and a half ago now. But it looks like they are going to get across this gap. The junction nearly made now. And the Netherlands are also getting to the front. So it looks like the time is nearly done for our four breakaway riders. So Rachel Neyland leads the breakaway over the top of Salmon Hill. Two more ascents of this climb to come. Urged on by some very keen supporters there. But it looks like this break has now come to nothing. Only a handful of metres in front, but some good riding there by the United States.
Yeah, they've nicely paced that up here. So they've seen a few riders on the front. I've also seen Ruth Winder as well for the USA. So she also was a team pursuit rider for the American team last year. I could see Lizzie Dylan there, I think maybe third or fourth wheel. So just keeping an eye on things ahead of affairs there, not letting anybody out of her sight. Just keeping an eye on what's going on.
Well, there's a couple of back markers here. Just been detached over the top of the climb there. Just rounding this first hairpin bend. Hopefully people will round this corner safely. This is where we saw the crash last time round. Everybody making that corner perfectly safely on this occasion. But it does look as if the bunch will be all back together again. 48.1 kilometers to go now. You can almost feel the tension in the peloton now. Some great team riding. Fantastic tactical play, especially by the Netherlands and also by Great Britain. But I did actually see Corinne Rivera moving up on the outside. She clearly is the protected rider for the United States. But I wonder how long the United States can afford to miss moves like that and spend riders on the front, especially losing Garnier, a rider of her class. She would have been absolutely vital in assisting any little breakaways, especially on the climb. Garnier, a very, very good climber indeed. Actually, I think this is the point where we saw the crash on the last lap. But again, they've got round that corner cleanly, thankfully.
Yeah, Megan Garnier, it's a shame to lose her because she is such a strong rider. But here, Dutch rider on the attack again. I think that's Ellen van Dijk.
It is van Dijk. She went across that gap. She was present at the front of the group. Now, the junction wasn't quite made. It was very assumptive there. And Ellen van Dijk has now jumped across the gap. So it looks like one of the riders has gone back. It looks like Eleanor Barker has gone backwards. We've still got... Eleanor Barker has gone back. So now this is a fascinating little move that's gone clear. Rachel Neyland just fighting to stay in contact with this group. And the gap really widening now under the impetus of the Netherlands. Fascinating. We thought that the junction had been made, but look at that, the gap goes out again. Who is now going to try and bring this back?
This is incredible. They've brought out such a big gap there in that descent. American team back on the front here, but that's quite dangerous. I think there was actually Ellen van Dijk. Ellen van Dijk still in the bunch. It was a different Dutch rider there that made that move.
Well, we have two Dutch riders in front now, one from Great Britain and one from Australia. And the American team are the squad that has been forced to chase. Interesting that no other teams are really assisting with this pacemaking. I saw a couple of riders from Spain there, a couple of French riders, Canadians as well, but no real cohesive chase at all. But that's what happens when you start to chase early on in number with 2 or 3 riders at the front. That is when the other teams say, well, if you're willing to chase. Also, they'll factor in the fact they've got one of the strongest riders in the race here, and one of the out-and-out favourites, Corinne Rivera. That's when the other smaller teams with less resource at their disposal will look to that one key team and actually force them to chase.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, we would have often looked to the Italian team in this sort of part of the bike race, but they've obviously had some trouble. A few riders taken down in a crash. Lesson Longer Borghini not having such a good day. So, they've not been contributing to the chase in this part of the race. But I think Hannah Barnes looks like she's just drawing away from the breakaway companions there a little bit. Yeah,
just going through the feed there. She's backed off just a little bit, but it is Lucinda Brand, the rider that's come across. She rides for Sunweb. She, of course, is already a world champion from the team time trial earlier in the week. Oh, Hannah Barnes just missing out on the feed there. A rueful smile from the Brit, but a very powerful group indeed. 2 Dutch riders, and an Australian and a British rider. Lizzie Deigner now on the front. She drifts to the front, more successful in taking the bottle on that occasion. And America being forced to chase. Bit of a chat there. Hayley Simmons back to the front there by the looks of things, just riding through. So great riding by Hayley Simmons. Such a powerful rider. And will be a key ally for Lizzie Deigner in the later stages of this race. Remember, only 2 more ascents of Salmon Hill still to come. But a formidable quartet of riders out in front. These are looking very, very dangerous.
They are looking very dangerous. Lucinda Brand, like you said, already a team time trial world champion from Sunday for Team Sunweb. Also won a stage of the Giro this year, so she's been having a fantastic season. And like I say again, any one of these Dutch riders, incredible riders in their own right, but probably still not really the team leaders here today.
I think we have had a change of the guard in terms of the Australian teams. It's Gracie Elvin who's now out in front for the Australians. Of course, Rachel Neyland was there. It was all change on the descent as we were dangling at the back of the peloton. A little bit of the change of the guard at the front, but look at this. Hayley Simmons sat in second wheel there. Lizzie Deigner in third wheel. The whole of the British squad actually happy to mark things out. as are the Dutch. So no other teams assisting with the pacemaking, leaving it to one rider from the United States. 18 seconds the lead has gone out to now.
Yeah, one rider from America, then the full British team that's still in the bunch. Obviously, they've got a rider away, then the Dutch team. Yeah, leaving it all to the America team currently. So they are making us all aware that Corinne Rivera must be feeling good. Brilliant display by the British girls so far to all be at the front. 44k to go the World Championship road race. It isn't long ago that these riders, they're all very young. They're all still gaining a lot of experience. So that is brilliant to see.
It certainly is. They've ridden absolutely fantastically today. But the lead now going out slowly but surely as these riders relay in the front. Everybody willing to assist with the pacemaking. Hannah Barnes being given the all clear at the moment to keep riding because of this. What this will of course do, if I can get my words out, will force the other teams to start using their resources early. I think Hannah Barnes will be thinking about Lizzie Daigen, but also she might have been given free rein to actually work with this group, because when you look at the composition of this group, should, for example, argument's sake, they stay together, Hannah Barnes would be in with a definite chance of the rainbow bands and a gold medal, or a medal, because she is such a ferocious finisher.
She is, yeah, she is. She's got a very fast finish, so originally known more for being a bunch sprinter, but now developed into a brilliant all-rounder. So you would definitely not bet against Hannah from this group. Gracie Elvin, who's joined this group from Team Australia, she got second this year at Tour of Flanders, so she's had a brilliant season this year so far. So it's great to see her at this part of the bike race. A strong climber and a rider that a lot of people said from the start this course would suit. So she's up there and showing everybody that she is going well. Still just 14 seconds for this break now, so not a huge gap. Still 42 kilometres to go of the race.
Yeah, another second chipped away as they roll over this cobbled section. And now the Netherlands, Denmark have taken up the chase as well, because they have Emily Dideriksen, the defending world road race champion, took that title last year in Qatar. They've had victory this morning in the junior road race. That was won by Julius Johansson in a solo breakaway. So the Danish camp will be buoyed by the success of the juniors this morning and taking things up at the front. For the first time, we've seen them really go on the offensive to try and bring this breakaway back. They've now got 18 seconds on a drastically reduced peloton. Four riders now out in front in the Elite Women's World Road Race Championships here in Bergen. And one of the Czech riders trying to get across this gap as well. Still the United States are the only team committed to the chase. Our four leaders: Gracie Elvin of Australia, Lucinda Brand of the Netherlands. She has teammate Amy Peters with her. And then the final rider for our quartet out in front is Hannah Barnes of Great Britain. And a great bit of riding here by the American squad, or shall I say American individual, to bring back that Czech rider. 12 seconds is the gap now. So some really selfless and powerful riding from the United States, especially considering there's four riders out in front and the US only have one rider leading the bunch.
They do. She's worked incredibly hard, and that's the thing in this sort of race. You have to have, if you can, selfless teammates that will sacrifice their own race for the good of the team. And we said before that can be difficult when you work with different teammates all year round for your trade team. Only come together a couple of times a year, perhaps, in your national team, perhaps for the European Championships or for the World Championships. So some very selfless riding, but it's interesting to see, again, two British riders still at the front of affairs, still keeping an eye on things. Eleanor Barker and Hayley Simmons there. Followed by the Dutch team, Chantal Black next in line.
Well, the rider on the front at the moment, ably assisting the United States. The only rider from the Czech Republic, that's Nikola Noskova, looking very strong. Tried to go across the gap on her own. Was neutralised by the effort of the United States. Now she finds herself on the front of the peloton. And there she is in that very distinctive Czech kit. 12 seconds is the lead. So interesting that as a solo rider, she's only got no teammates at all. And out attack, this is astonishing stuff. Leading the chase and now trying to go clear herself. Surely someone will try and bring her back. And yes, unsurprisingly, one of the riders from the Netherlands immediately gets into the slipstream of the American who attacked. I think is that a little bit of frustration perhaps starting to show now?
Yeah, perhaps. She's got this gap down to just 11 seconds and just needs to close that gap a little bit.
So just over 40 kilometres to go In about 3 or 4 Ks, they will cross the finish line with 2 laps to go. 12 seconds. We have 4 leaders out in front. This is the bunch being led by the United States of America. The Netherlands and Great Britain and Australia all at the head of affairs as well, trying to neutralise any attacks and any concerted efforts of chasing. So desperate times now for the US, trying to look after their favoured rider, Corinne Rivera. And meanwhile, our group of 4 riders out in front, comprised of Gracie Elvin of Australia, Lucinda Brand and Amy Peters of the Netherlands, and Hannah Barnes of Great Britain. And another speculative attack here. Looks like another rider from Denmark going clear.
Yeah, Danish going well. They've got a strong team, 7 riders at the moment. Obviously the winner last year, Amalie de Dirksen, but known more for her sprinting ability, so perhaps not the one to watch on this course. But Cecilia Ludwig is perhaps the one to watch on a day like today. But a really strong team as well. Pernille Mertensen, who is the under-23 European champion, as well as Trine Schmidt, who is slightly older and actually took a break of about 4 years from the sport and is now back. She was back winning World Championship medals back in 2008. I think she won a track points race World Championship medal back then. Took quite a long break, but is now back riding. So 7 riders for the Danish team here. Already had some brilliant results at this World Championship from the juniors, a win in the junior boys, a silver in the junior girls, coached by Catherine Marcel, who was brilliant riding in her own right back in your day.
Thank you much indeed for reminding me of that. Yes, I did. I was aware of Catherine Marcel, an absolutely sensational rider back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Came out of the shadow of Jenny Longo to be a bit of a superstar now, passing on her knowledge to the Danish team. And there's a real good atmosphere in the Danish squad. I've been looking at social media quite closely over the last week in Bergen. Big celebrations for the Danish team. And as I say, when you think about the size of the nation, but their ability to perform, and the same I think can be said of Norway as well. Year after year, both in men's and women's cycling, they produce some very, very solid riders. And they have a very, very healthy cycling scene in Norway. And the men's, there's 6 continental teams in Norway as well. More teams than they have in Italy and in Spain, surprisingly. But you can see why they absolutely love this sport. And I'll say it again, Bergen has really taken these World Championships to their hearts. Remarkable crowds out. A real festival atmosphere here in the centre of town. 39 kilometres to go now. Great Britain still mobbing the front there as this peloton rounds the corner. Just got to go through this little chicane before we head into the finishing straight. Remember, we still have 4 leaders out in front coming into the penultimate lap. 2 more ascents of the climb of Salmon Hill. Where will we see any more attacks? The situation on the road. Oh, a bit of an attack by one of the riders from Canada, I think it is.
Danny King straight on her wheel there. She's been well placed all day, and she's straight on the wheel to follow any attacks, but don't think they're getting very far at the moment.
A good little counter move there by Danny King, who has been one of the riders I've seen the most of, because she's been at or near the head of affairs, working absolutely tirelessly today, neutralising those moves. And still there is no concerted chase, no organised team at the front. Riders either trying to attack on their own or trying to drive hard on the front. So now 2 laps to go as they roll through. 3 hours and 6 seconds, still with just under 40 kilometres to go. And Canada lead the bunch through. Closely flanked by riders from the United Kingdom, sorry, from Great Britain. And there's the rest of the bunch. Definitely some tired legs in there, that is for sure. 11 seconds as we roll through, going through the tunnel, with now 2 laps to go in this Elite Women's World Road Race Championships. We're going to take another short commercial break. Please don't go away. Well, it looks like the rider from Norway about to be brought back to heel by an absolutely rampaging Netherlands squad. They are not missing a trick today. Managed to infiltrate that breakaway that we saw earlier on that was caught. Didn't quite catch the catch, as it were. I thought that they were still out in front, but no, the bunch is all back together, and this is that nasty short climb before the drop down, and then the penultimate commencement of Salmon Hill. And you can almost sense the fatigue in the riders' legs now, Joe.
Yeah, I think that was Marianne Vos that just closed that gap straight away to that Norwegian rider, and I've just caught a glimpse of Annemiek van Vleuten on the left of the bunch there, so she's getting herself towards the front. Danny King, we can see, I've just seen Anna van der Breggen as well, so with just 2 more times at the main climb, we should be seeing some action coming now.
I think Elisa Longo-Borghini is back in the mix as well, incredibly. Or is that Bronzini in the mix?
Might be Bronzini, but Danny King goes now.
Oh, this is a great move, Danny King. What a big attack here by King. Goes on the right-hand side, really stamps on the pedals, opens up a gap straight away. Impressive stuff for Danny King. And I think that was Marianne Vos who tried to get across the gap there but couldn't respond. Impressive riding here by King.
Yeah, brilliant attack there by Danny King. You know, real good acceleration, getting that gap straight away. Marianne Vos couldn't close it down, so we've now got another Dutch rider going to try and bridge that gap.
Well, it's Yannick Ensing trying to get across the gap. She's taken a French ride and one of the Australians clear as well. Great riding here by Danny King. Open up a big gap now. Danny King on the offensive. Puts it onto the big ring, raises herself out of the saddle. This is an absolutely wonderful effort, aggressive effort by Danny King. Amazing there, she broke the will of Marianne Vos. And also in this little counter-attack here, that is Elsie Delzen of France. But look at the gap that that attack by King has opened up.
That's a brilliant move, and it really puts the pressure on the Dutch to chase now. We saw straight away Marianne Vos couldn't quite respond, and it was up to Janneke Ensing to be the Dutch rider to cover that move. Lizzie right now can just sit back, nothing to worry about third. Oh, we've got a bit of a trash. That's Hayley Simmons down, Ashley Moolman-Passio, Australian rider as well.
Oh, another crash just on the bottom curve of the foot of that little climb there. Not good to see. Especially, well, any crash at all, but a significant rider there, Ashley Moolman-Passio, one of the outside favourites for today's race. She loves the hills, but at the moment, Danny King, 26 years of age, had a great season so far. Her last race was the race that was won by Lizzie Deignan. That was the GP Plouet. She was 9th in that race, a real good indicator of her condition, a very similar course profile to today as well. But Danny King clearly been given free rein to go on the offensive, and that was a really strong attack. It looked as if for one moment Marianne Vos, the 3-time world champion, was going to get in contact, but then that stinging acceleration effectively broke her, and Danny King is now clear and is opening up a big gap. Riders now blocking the road. No real concerted chase with 33 kilometres to go. Great move by King.
Wow, she's got a big gap here. So most viewers might know Danny King better for being a track rider. So she was Olympic champion on the track back in 2012 alongside myself and Laura Trott, now Laura Kenny. But she's focused on the road for the last 2 seasons, and she's come on leaps and bounds, gained lots of experience, previously riding for the Wiggle Honda team, now Silence Pro Cycling. This is a brilliant move by here, and everyone should be worried. She's got a big gap very quickly.
Oh, she's looking very, very strong today. Great form on the bike, full of fight. Well, these are the 3 riders just behind. From France, represented Elsie Delzen. And then also from the Netherlands, we have Yannick Ensing. And then from Australia, we have Amanda Spratt. 3 very, very classy riders indeed. It looks like these 3 may bridge across to Danny King, and I think that will actually be a good thing. Still got a lot of racing still to go, still 2 ascents of the climb of Salmon Hill, as well as those flatter sections into the headwind. So Danny King riding well, and I think if she just takes a glance over her shoulder, maybe just relax a second, let that group come across, they could be a really formidable foursome.
They could. So Janneke Ensing of Holland, she recently won a stage of the Bols Rentals Ladies Tour in Holland, which was the Women's World Tour stage race there recently. Also the Mountains jersey at the Tour of Norway and the Santos Tour down on the Women's Tour in Australia back in January. So very, very well-known climber. Amanda Spratt as well, also a very strong climber. She was actually 6th at La Course this year, climbing up Col d'Izoard. So this is a very strong group here, and like you say, you know, winning riders in their own right.
Well, there we go. That is your answer behind no real chase. Germany on the front there in the form of Lisa Brennauer. A very, very classy rider indeed, but no real numbers, no real cohesion. And there, Danny King drops to the back of that group. And there is another rider coming across the gap. They can't quite get the jersey. Is it one of the riders or another rider from Australia? But so 4 riders clear now. Ensing, King, Delzen and Amanda Spratt of Australia. A very strong group, and look at the gap here, Joe. This is really opening up now. The gap, of course, foreshortened by the climb, but that is a significant gap that they've opened.
Yeah, the Penton have only just come into sight, so they've got themselves out of sight pretty quickly there. There is one rider trying to kind of cross it. Oh, here she is from Sweden.
This is Hannah Nilsson. Hannah Nilsson, she certainly looks like a climber, very, very slim indeed, looks very, very smooth on this climb. She is gradually getting across this gap. There's a real climbing style there. Locked into the bars, not much movement from the top part of her body, trying to bridge across to this four-rider group out in front. So, four riders out in front with a 25-second lead over the peloton, and the rider in between from Sweden is Hannah Nilsson. This is your quartet out in front. Yannick Ensing of the Netherlands, Amanda Spratt on your screen now of Australia. Also there is Danny King of Great Britain, and finishing the quartet from France is Elise Delzen. A formidable quartet of riders, and look at this. Again, no chase at all. We know that the USA have spent or committed a lot of firepower to the front. They have now dropped back. But look, we've got riders from the Netherlands represented in front. Riders from Great Britain also represented, all blocking the front. An ideal situation.
Well, all the favourites have got a rider in the front group here now. So obviously the Dutch, Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten, they've got a rider up ahead. Lizzie Dijkman's got Danny King up ahead. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the French rider, she's got a teammate Elise Delzen up ahead. So who's going to do the chasing? Because the American team have already worked very hard in this race. They've already been on the front for a lot of kilometres, bringing back other breakaways. So remains to be seen whether they'll have the power to bring this one back as well. The gap now up to 37 seconds back to the peloton from the leaders.
Well, this is a good gap here. Fantastic riding by these four riders. Look to me, Joe, as if they're all committed as well. Maybe not the out-and-out favourites, but all of these riders extremely classy. It's some good riding here by the Swede, trying to get across this gap now. She's looking like she might actually make it. She takes a bit of a glance over her shoulder, and this is where the climb just starts to bite. The climb of Salmon Hill. One more time after this, and believe you me, this is really going to start to hurt now.
This is going to start to hurt. We might see some of the big favourites make a move on this hill, though they might still wait, you know, a lap and a half to go at this stage. But quite a big gap here for this group, and like we said, not sure who's going to take on the chasing, but there'll be riders sat in that group thinking they want to win this bike race. Are they going to jump across, or are they going to wait for someone else to bring it back?
Well, I think there's going to have to be a real organised and concerted chase, as we've seen before. We've seen teams commit just one or two riders to the front when we've had breakaways. It hasn't quite been enough. And here is the bunch behind again. Look at the shape, drastically reduced bunch now, maybe 45 riders in that peloton spread across the road, indicating that the speed isn't too high. Riders from Denmark, again, the United States are the only team really committed to try and bring this back. 5 seconds to the rider in between now. Hannah Nilsson looks as if she may get in contact with the four riders in front. Desperately close now. The gap foreshortened, of course, by the speed that they're riding up the climb. But she looked concentrated, she looked focused, she's certainly not panicking, clawing things back inch by inch.
She's getting there. She's almost going to make this junction there. She's not far from the backwheel of Danny King, just up ahead for these leaders, led by Janneke Ensing from the Dutch team. Amanda Spratt just coming through now. So a group of strong climbers here. So all big threats, all potential, you know, all winners of big bike races already. But we've got some Dutch riders on the front here, Australia on the front of the peloton, all looking like they want to stretch their legs slightly.
Well, some Thai and American laces at the back. Ruth Winder now just getting dropped at the back of this bunch now. Looks like her day is done. We knew that this climb would cause some damage, but down there's an attack there. Anna van der Breggen, the World Tour winner, goes on the offensive. The Olympic road race champion is leaving nothing to chance at all. Nuja Doma is on her wheel of Poland. The elite now rising to the top.
They are. I've seen Lizzie Dijkman in that group as well. I've also seen Annemiek van Vleuten in that group as well. I think Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, I think I saw a French jersey in there. So these are the real favourites now. They're really drawing clear from the rest of the greatly reduced peloton.
Well, look at the gap that's opened up. Anna van der Breggen driving hard, clearly happy with things, wanting to split things up. We wondered when we'd see the big riders come to the fore, and this is the answer. Katrina Nuja Doma of Poland sits in second position. Also there, Annemiek van Vleuten, the world time trial champion, a real elite group of riders. This is the front group on the road, and the gap has been slashed by the attack by van der Breggen, still driving hard on the front, hasn't even looked round for any assistance at all. It is Pauline, I think it is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot that is also there. It is indeed. She's looking very, very dangerous, and also Who else is just trying to look who else is in the mix there?
We've got Cecilia Ludwig from the Danish team there. She's a rider that we talked about a lot as being, you know, a really exciting prospect for the future. Still very young, had a lot of brilliant results already this year. And also the Australian rider Katrin Garfoot, who got the bronze in the time trial on Tuesday. She was in that group.
Also Tatiana Gudezzo of Italy. So representation from Italy in the move, but just look at that acceleration of what it's done to the peloton here. So several riders from the Netherlands. We've got a couple of riders, of course, from Australia. 3 riders from the Netherlands. I can't actually see Lizzie Deignan at the moment, but Danny King is definitely in the mix. She's now been caught by that group. It's just dropping back through to the rear of this little group now. So fascinating stuff on the climb, but some real aggressive riding here by the Dutch team, starting to impose themselves on this championships.
3 Dutch riders in this group. We just seen Annemiek van Vleuten on the front of that group, putting the pressure on Anna van der Breggen as well. Just joined. This is a really very, very dangerous move now.
There certainly is. A bit of a glance over there from Ensing. She was away earlier on. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot is the last rider in this group. She's the only representation from France, so she won't really need to assist with the pacemaking, especially given we have 3 Dutch riders and a couple of Australians in this group. There's Danny King in 4th wheel, grimacing over the top of the climb. This is a very, very select group that is now going clear. Is this going to be the group from which the rainbow jersey comes? But a little bit of brinkmanship now. Riders looking over their shoulders, just assessing the scene, seeing who is in this move. Well, Danny King, irrepressible today, goes straight to the front of this group. A little bit of an attack, a little bit of a drive. So about 10 or 12 riders now going clear, and some real clear daylight opened up between them and the remnants of the peloton.
This could be the race-winning move now, and Danny King getting herself straight to the front of that. You know, we've got the descent coming up soon. She'll want to be in a good position for that. 3 Dutch riders, you know, this is their bikers now. We've always said these are by far the strongest team. A couple of riders not far off the back of that. They might be trying to bridge across, but this is going to be a tough ask now on the descent to try and close that gap.
It is the 3 riders from the Netherlands, Ensing, Anna van der Breggen, the Olympic road champion, and Annemiek van Vleuten, one of the other favourites in this race, already a gold medalist this week. She took out the individual time trial, and she is the rider number 14 at the top of the screen, rolling through. And the rider in 2nd wheel in the white and red for Poland is Katarina Niewiadoma, the winner of the OVO Women's Tour this year. It's a real classy group of riders now drawing itself clear. Great Britain have representation in this move, and it is Danny King, who's ridden superbly so far. She sits in 4th wheel. Also there is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot of France, multiple world champion. She held the mountain bike, cyclocross and road world titles all at the same time. Has had a light season road-wise, but she does look very dangerous at the moment.
She does, you know, she's in a brilliant position here. There's also Tatiana Gudezzo from the Italian team. So we've always talked about Alessa Longo Borghini, but Tatiana Gudezzo was the world road race champion back in 2009. So she is in this group representing Italy. So not such a bad day for the Italians, despite that crash earlier on that took out 3 of their riders.
Well, Gudezzo, clearly, as you said, there, very experienced. Look at this. Lizzie Deignan is now trying to get across the gap there. Just saw that orange helmet. There's now about 10, 12 riders in this group, and if you just look at the top right of your screen, it is Lizzie Deignan trying to make contact, and there she is. She's just stormed across the gap there, and it looks as if she's going to get in contact. The rider last in this group is Cecilia Ludwig, classy rider from Denmark. But it looks as if Lizzie Deignan is going to make contact in just a few moments' time. Fantastic stuff from Deignan.
She's an incredibly skillful descender as well, so, you know, she wants to try and close that gap. She's obviously making us a big effort here. You know, it's make or break. This is the key point in the race. She's got to close that gap.
So the United States now forced to chase. They have no representation in this front group. And Joe, I was trying to look back through, I mean, the fact that the United States are trying to chase would suggest that Corinne Rivera is in that small nucleus of riders that remains of the peloton. And now Norway assisting with the pacemaking as well. About 30 or 40 riders left in the group there. They still have a chance, but just looking at the way they rode the last ascent of Salmon Hill, it's going to be very difficult. Even if they get back in contact, I think the strong riders like van der Breggen, as Deignan and van Vleuten, looks like they've got another bite at the cherry should this come back together.
Yeah, if it comes back together, those big name riders will go again. So we've got here Dutch rider Chantal Black near the front of affairs and Hannah Barnes. They won't be doing any work to chase this group back because they've obviously got teammates up ahead. America, the big losers here, they've done a lot of work in this race, and so far not a rider in the front group, but with just 8 seconds to that group of leaders. I think the leaders aren't working effectively together at the moment, but the peloton seems to be getting themselves a bit more organised, so looks like they will get back together.
It certainly does. Some great chasing here by the United States. They have worked tirelessly, not managed to infiltrate many breakaways, spent a lot of time on the front of the peloton. This is that elite group of riders. It's such a good group of riders. All of the main favourites are there. They've almost neutralised themselves by their very presence with each other. This is that cobbled section. And now with only 6 seconds is the lead that is indicated. It does look as if there's a very good chance it could be all back together again as one of the Canadians goes on the left-hand side. But I have a feeling this may now come back before we climb Salmon Hill on one more occasion. This has been a fascinating race. The composition of this group, a real indicator of who's got the good legs to try and finally take that rainbow jersey.
Yeah, well, it's too big a group, really, for them to really be working effectively together. And with 3 Dutch riders there, you know, why would any other team work? You know, with 3 riders in the group, it's up to them to do the pace setting. So, you know, quite right, don't come through, there's no need to. It looks like they are going to all come back together again, and they can do the same thing again next time up the hill, next lap.
It certainly does. Well, the junction, as we say, has been made. 23.2 kilometres to go. It is back together, but it is interesting, Joe, isn't it? Because although the climb is significant and you've got that precursor beforehand to really sap the strength from the legs, what we also have is just over 9 kilometres of gradually dropping and flat road to the finish line. So it might not necessarily be dictated by what happens on the climb, as we see Black attack. Well, it's Chantal Black has attacked for the Netherlands. The Netherlands again on the offensive immediately. Another rider from France makes the gap, and another rider then from Great Britain is trying to get across this gap as well.
Hannah Barnes again. Brilliant rider. I think this is Audrey Cordon-Rago from the French team. We've already seen her in a breakaway today. Chantal Black and Hannah Barnes again. So 3 active riders we've seen already in this bike race. Again, making a breakaway. So brilliant move by Chantal Black there. As soon as that group was brought back together, the Dutch rider attacked straight away. Well,
that is the textbook time to go. Once the junction is made, there's that momentary hesitation which provides opportunities for riders, you know, who are intelligent to try and attack. So that is another little tasty move that has gone clear now. Always the big teams represented. I'm not surprised by the might of the Netherlands. But I must admit, I have been impressed by the way that the Great Britain team has really ridden as a unit, and the French also riding very strongly in the latter stages of this championships. Well, 3 riders now out in front. Hannah Barnes, Chantal Black and Cordon of France. 3 nations that have been really on the offensive in this race. And look at the gap now, Joe, opening up. There's a confirmation. Black, Barnes, Cordon-Rago as they round that top corner. 7 seconds is the lead, and this is where they'll feel the wind in their noses again. This is that difficult section that, if they ride together, they could start to open up a little bit of a lead, because this is going to force some of the other teams on the offensive. Now it's Australia picking up the chase.
Yeah, Australia missed out this little move here. They have been well represented so far, but with the 14, they're obviously trying to close this gap. Katrin Garf's obviously got the good legs today. She was straight away in that lead group when it went on Salmon Hill, so they won't want to miss out on this move.
So our leaders working very well together, slowly but surely eking out a nice little lead here. Hannah Barnes really maturing as a rider, former British champion, finishing the top 10 in the time trial earlier in the week, which was, I think we agreed, was a standout performance, adding to her depth in strength, her versatility as a rider, and clearly her endurance as well. Now only 21 kilometres to go, one more lap. Just look at the size of that peloton. I'd estimate no more than 25-30 riders left, and one of the Australians now trying to go clear to get across that gap. They know that that is a very, very dangerous move.
They do, and you know, everyone wants to have a rider represented in the group, so someone's trying to make the bridge across there herself, which is a bold move to do if the peloton aren't working properly together to close the group, to close the gap, which they won't do when you've got a British rider, a French rider and a Dutch rider. The rest of the teams won't want to work, so she's taking it up on herself to try and bridge across. 15 seconds though, it's going out quite quickly. We just had 8 seconds before, so they are gaining here.
Oh, great riding there by Hannah Barnes, looking very, very stylish on the bike. Let's see if we can get a closer glimpse of who the rider from it definitely is. One of the riders from Australia going across the gap there. It's Sarah Roy. Another very strong rider, but this gap, slowly but surely, these riders working extremely well as a unit and opening up the gap. They've stolen another couple of seconds into this headwind section. 18 seconds now. Ragol taking her turn on the front. And I must admit, they're working very, very well as a tightly knit unit now.
They are. We saw just earlier Lizzie Dylan and Danny King have a little conversation at the front of the peloton, so I'm not quite sure who was saying what to each other there, but they're obviously having some communication. Danny clearly got good legs. Lizzie clearly in better shape than she perhaps thought she would be, you know, be able to make that group when it went on that climb. So they'll be having a little talk about how they can work together, but they've got a representative up the front here of Hannah Barnes. They haven't got to worry too much at the moment because they've got to ride her away anyway, so not long to go now and they're going to get the bell.
They are going to get the bell. 22 seconds is the lead. Back to the peloton. As you see Sarah Roy just coming through now. She's the sole chaser. Very hard on your run into a headwind, especially when you've got 3 strong riders out in front. But who is leading the chase? It looks like it's still the United States, who have worked tirelessly today. They still have that belief clearly in Corinne Rivera, the 25-year-old who's had a stellar season so far. They certainly are putting all of their eggs in one basket. But look, there's several riders now getting back into contact. This flatter section of the lead into the line, providing opportunity for riders to get back into the mix. Meanwhile, our 3 leaders out in front, taking those turns on the front, doing about 20 or 15 or 20 seconds each before swinging off. And there it is, the finish line opens up for the penultimate time. The next time through, it will be the finish, and it will be the rainbow jersey that is up for grabs. So Chantal Black, the 27-year-old from the Netherlands, takes them through. She swings over. Hannah Barnes, the former British road champion, takes the bell for Great Britain. Absolutely wonderful racing here. And meanwhile, Sarah Roy, she will be taking the line soon. And the United States rounding the corner, leading the remnants of the bunch, which has, Joe, actually swelled back to around 50 or 60 riders.
It has. All those riders that were dropped on Salmon Hill earlier, they've obviously worked hard on that descent of those flatter sections to get themselves back to this group, so it has swelled. But those riders would have worked very hard to close that gap, so it's unlikely that they'll then be able to do much the next time up the climb. You know, they've worked very hard to get themselves back in this bunch, but clearly they're probably not the strongest climbers in the group.
Well, there is the group that goes through. They take the bell. 1 lap to go in the Elite Women's World Road Championships.
When the doctor told me I would lose all my sight, it hit me like a hammer. I could take photos that would mimic how sighted people see, but why would I do that? The world I envision is partly my imagination, but built from all the other senses. This car is very sculptural. The lines are quite exquisite because they blend and reappear and disappear. The Arteon is more than a car. You don't need eyes to see beauty.
For people, for plans, for 200 years.
Oh, this is beyond a joke. Since she joined Vitality, it's been non-stop running. Any more of this and I'll eat your trainers.
When you sign up to Vitality Health Insurance, we give you half-price monthly gym membership.
Bingo! Dog's not allowed in there.
And until the 15th of October, there's no gym joining fee either.
Yes, off you go to join the gym. I'm off to join this lovely cushion. Oh, hello, cushion. Oh, I love you.
Search Vitality Health Insurance today.
Thompson is changing to TUI. We'll offer the same great holidays, plus so much more. We cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. TUI. Discover your smile. Atoll protected.
Anything can happen when you're out and about, but with the AA, there's no need to worry. Join from just £39 a year. Our cutting-edge technology means we can fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside in around 30 minutes. And with us, you'll get unlimited call-outs, so we'll always keep you rolling. So why wait? Breakdown membership from £39 a year. Search AA Summer or call 0800 107 1705. The AA, because anything can happen.
Skechers Sport with memory foam.
Here are our three leaders. They are 13 seconds over one chasing rider. And then 31 seconds to the peloton. And there is the evidence of an earlier crash. That is Chantal Black. Despite falling, she's back up and looking extremely strong. Gordon Rago of France rolls through. And then Hannah Barnes just slots in behind. And that blue car on the left-hand side, the fact that that's been pulled in is a good sign for the breakaway because the lead is over 30 seconds.
Yes, we've seen a few changing times at the top, but it looks like they're getting a really big lead now, so perhaps up to nearly 45 seconds over the peloton. Sarah Roy here still putting in a big chase trying to get them. She's not that far behind, but not quite making it at the moment. But not a great deal of reaction from the bunch, which is interesting because they're running out of road. 16 kilometres to go now, just 10 miles left of racing.
They are running out of options. This is Rosella Ratto of Italy, and she's the second chasing rider on the road. I'm wondering if that if she is at 27 seconds, see how much she has got in relation to a gap on the peloton. As we saw them rolling over the bridge, again, there was no real shape to the bunch there. Didn't seem to have a lot of impetus, although they were riding into a headwind. Here is the bunch behind. It's saying there are 28 seconds, still about 40, maybe even 50 riders left in this field. Being led by Poland at the moment. They'll no doubt be looking after the interests of Nui Adoma, the 22-year-old winner of the OVO Women's Tour. Meanwhile, we head up in front. These are our three leaders. Hannah Barnes on the right-hand side for Great Britain. Audrey Gordon-Rago, she's the rider on the front in the blue for France. And then Chantal Black for the Netherlands. The legs are really going to start to hurt now. Just look at the chain alignment on this hill, on the small ring and one of the smaller sprockets at the back. This gradient really starting to bite and test the strength and endurance of these riders.
It is, and this isn't even the main climb of the circuit. This is just the smaller one that on the course profile just looks like more of a speed hump. But we can see at this stage of the race, it will take its toll on these riders, and this is going to sting the legs. And the gap is still going out to the peloton now.
It certainly is. Well, Roy still ploughing a lonely furrow, trying to get back on terms, but it's so hard. Fatigue really playing a part now. And of course, all of the riders in front swapping turns, saving that little bit of energy. So Sarah Roy now will be using that neutral service car as almost a cover. Look at the gap now, it's really gone out. Annemiek van Vleuten and also Van der Breggen at the front, not, well, needing at all to assist in the pacemaking. In fact, almost blocking the road. I saw one of the Australian riders moving up the outside to maybe try and add a little bit of impetus. But the lead, I think, is definitely going out.
It is going out. We can see at the back of the bunch there, Anneliese Dirksen, last year's winner. I think we just saw Amelia Farah as well for the Swiss team. Dutch riders at the front of the group there. Ellen van Dijk, Annemiek van Vleuten, not under any pressure to chase because Chantal Black's away. You know, she could win this bike race. So it remains to be seen whether they are going to go for it on Salmon Hill now or not.
Well, Chantal Black is a superb rider, 27 years of age now. Rides for the Boels-Dolman squad. What a roster of talent they have at their disposal in this World Championships. Any 3 or 4 of the riders from that team could come out as gold medal winner. and of course wearer of the rainbow jersey for the next year. But it's all in the hands of these riders at the moment. These are the three riders out in front. Can they hold on? "39 seconds for our three leaders, 15 seconds to the rider just behind Sarah Roy. Audrey Cordon-Rago takes the corner. This is the rider just behind, agonisingly close, so near yet so far. One can only imagine the pain that she's going through at the moment, Joe.
Oh, it's agonising because she can just about see them perhaps on the straighter bits, but there's no way they're going to sit up and wait for her because they don't need to. They've got three of them working really well together, and although the gap is going out to the bunch, she's currently in 4th place on the row. She needs to close that gap to put herself into the medal contention position.
Well, 40 seconds is now the lead, but we've seen the damage that can be caused when some of the stronger riders go on the offensive. We saw that amazing surge last time up Salmon Hill by Anna van der Breggen, which exploded, shredded the peloton. But she took a group clear that was almost too good. And now, interestingly, we're seeing the Netherlands on the front. Are they going to try and do another counter-attack now? I think it's Van Vleuten on the front at the moment. Anna van der Breggen, it looks as if, is in second wheel. So 3 Dutch riders lead the chase. 41 seconds it is to our 3 leaders out in front. And Sarah Roy has closed the gap now to a very slender 11 or 12 seconds. This is an absolutely fascinating race. Wonderful racing all through this week. And now they hit the slopes proper of Salmon Hill for the very last time.
I think we're going to see fireworks now from the Dutch riders as they're still back in that peloton up this climb. We can see them getting to the front, you know. They want to go, they want to unleash that power, and, you know, we've got some big name favourites that are still in the peloton. And this gap, they could close that really quickly if they really put the hammer down on this climb. But yeah, we'll see what they do. With 3 riders at the front there, though, what's going to be their move?
Yep, this is going to be, they're going to be watching each other. They're going to be wanting to press on so they keep the gap, but also they'll be wanting to keep just a little bit back to try and counter any attacks. But just look at the speed at the head of affairs here now. The Netherlands really on the offensive. The bunch has already split on the lower slopes of the climb. Lizzie Deignan struggling to stay in contact at the top of your screen there. Oh, this is absolutely desperate times now for Deignan. It doesn't look as if she's got enough in the tank, but it looks like the former world champion Tatiana Gudezzo, she's going to go and try to get across the gap. But the pace, I think, is being put on by Anna van der Breggen and Katerina Nuyadoma.
It is. We've got 2 Dutch riders in that group. I think Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Cassia Nuyadoma, Australian rider as well. So these are the big favourites. And look how much that gap's come down.
It's come down within about 500 metres. The gap has halved. You can still see Sarah Roy, but now an attack from the French rider Audrey Cordon-Rago, 28 years of age, looking very good. What has Hannah Barnes got left? Because Chantal Black has shut the gap immediately. It won't be long before they come to the top of the climb. The gap is shortening all of the time. The motorbikes just trying to get in front now. So Cordon-Rago eager to try and press home this advantage. Let's have a look at the gap. Who is going to round the corner next? Will it be the desperate figure of Sarah Roy? Still is Roy interesting the gap here. I think it's 19 seconds to Roy and a further 15 seconds back to the peloton. They've changed the way they've done the timings on here for us. A little bit difficult to read, but still a lot of daylight between our 3 riders out in front.
They have got a lot of daylight still. You know, Hannah Barnes for Great Britain, the top British rider on the road at the moment. Lizzie Deignan perhaps struggling a little bit, totally understandably. But she's in a brilliant position now, Hannah Barnes. She's up at the head of the race. We're probably going to see the big favourites, Anna van der Breggen, Annemiek van Vleuten, come up across if they really launch a big attack up this climb this time. And then it's a really interesting position to be in them.
Well, this was that plateau. We've still got the steepest part of the climb still to come. I think that group, it looks like it has all come back together at the moment. That little attack has been neutralised. I can just see Ellen van Dijk in there, just moving up around on the outside. Bit of a flick of the elbows there from Amy Peters. So Van Vleuten is back in that group as well. So interesting times here. Not too sure what the situation is, if there's another rider out in front, but the Dutch mobbing the front at the moment. Amy Peters setting the tempo. Just in the centre of your screen is is Nuyadoma of Poland. Also Pauline Ferrand-Prévot just sat in the middle. 22 seconds back to the bunch now.
Yeah, that attack seems to have been neutralised. This group is still working hard, though, and their gap's gone out significantly. It doesn't look like Sarah Roy is going to close that gap. But yeah, that attack from the Dutch riders back in the bunch did bring that gap down. But these girls have continued to work hard. and their gap is growing even more, and now we get onto the proper slopes of Salmon Hill.
Well, this is it. This is the steep section now. 1.5 kilometres, average 6.4%. The bottom part is the steepest, as you can see there from our graphic, 7.8%. So these riders have to ride with patience. They really have to measure their effort. If they overcook it, push themselves into the red, they won't be able to respond to any attacks. But there is an attack on the left-hand side. That is Amy Pieters, who goes again for the Netherlands. Italy are also equal to it as well. And in close attendance, Catherine Garfoot of Australia. So all of the big nations making sure they're at or near the head of affairs here.
They are. They're all getting in that right position. You know, they're going. This isn't about sliding room this time. This is about making their big moves. And we've got a lot of Dutch riders there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Dutch riders at the front of that group. Australia as well. Who is going to go this time?
And Vita Hein is also there from the home team, Norway. And now there's a big attack. Another rider from the Netherlands goes here. Klateria Nieuwiadoma goes on the right-hand side as well for Poland. She's one of the finest climbers in the field, out of the saddle and attacking. And she's opening up a little bit of a gap here. It's over Van Vleuten. Van Vleuten struggling to hold the wheel of the flying pole up this climb. Fascinating stuff here. Catherine Garfoot also there as well. And the gap closing with every single pedal rev. Fascinating, aggressive racing here.
Nieuwiadoma is incredibly talented, such a good climber, already some brilliant results this year. She got 3rd place behind the Boels-Dolmers duo of Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Dijkman at all 3 Ardennes Classics. But here she's going on the attack herself, and she's gapping Annemiek van Vleuten.
Well, this is an amazing ride by the young Polish rider. We know she excels on the climbs. And as you said, on the podium in every race in the Ardennes. A real indicator of her ability over this sort of terrain. She now swings to the back. We've still got a few hundred metres of this climb still to go. So the world time trial champion heads to the front now. So the Netherlands really riding well in this race. Van Vleuten takes her turn at the front. Sitting in her slipstream is Catharina Garfoot. And then unsurprisingly, just behind, another orange jersey, Anna van der Breggen, the Olympic road champion. This really is an elite group now, moving clear of what is left of an absolutely shattered and decimated peloton.
This is an incredibly elite group. So we've got the top 3, the 3 medalists from the time trial on Tuesday: Annemiek van Vleuten, Anna van der Breggen, Catherine Garfoot. And then we've got Cassia Nieuwiadoma, who's someone that we talked a lot about for this course because she's such a good climber. And here we've got Pauline Ferrand-Prévot chasing for France there. She's missed out on this move.
She certainly has. She just could not go with that acceleration. Also, Corinne Rivera as well. She's ridden extremely well. So there's 2 groups now looking like they're about to merge. Hannah Barnes, I don't think she's aware of who is coming up behind, but is basically an army of riders from the Netherlands out of 3 riders in front. But still, Barnes, I must admit, she's looking very composed, very, very comfortable, belying the fact that this deep into this very long and difficult race.
She's looking very good. Just 11 kilometres to go, and she's on the front here, so she can control the pace here. She's ready for these girls to join her. She knows it's going to be tough when you get these incredibly good climbers here. And Annemiek van Vleuten is not going to hang around. She is powering past them.
Well, Annemiek van Vleuten using that TT prowess, one of the finest riders in the world, goes to the front, pulls a big turn on the front. Anna van der Breggen also goes on the left-hand side, adding some more coals to the fire, the impetus of this group. Van Vleuten turning a massive gear over the top of this climb. Look at the speed here, look at the pace. And Hannah Barnes also managing to hang in there. She's hanging in on 5th wheel on the wheel of Nieuwiadoma. So great riding there by Barnes. Mightily impressive stuff.
She's hanging in brilliantly. She's spent a lot of time in breaks today, a lot of time, you know, riding into the wind with other riders. But she's hanging on there, and they're just easing up over the top. And I think, is it Cassia Nieuwiadoma getting ready to go again?
And Nieuwiadoma just goes on the left-hand side, hugging the inside line. So we have 3 riders from the Netherlands, 1 rider from France. Gordon Rago just struggling to stay in contact at the back of this group. There is Hannah Barnes, the 24-year-old, sat in 5th position. And leading at the moment is the world time trial champion, Annemiek van Vleuten. Will this group galvanise and work as a unit? Or will they take things off the boil and let the rest of the peloton get back in contact? And I think at the moment, this is the Netherlands' race to lose, Joe. They've got 3 riders. They're supreme in terms of numerical superiority. What can they do? Can they take the 2nd title? There's a big gap opened to the rest of the bunch, but I'd estimate it's only about 10 or 15 seconds. But if these riders get together, especially into this headwind section, sorry, it's a little bit more over 10 seconds, looks like 15, 20 seconds now. this is an extremely good group that has gone clear. It's saying 44 seconds to our leaders.
Wow, that's a huge gap. I mean, it's less than 10 kilometres to go now. And if these girls work together, which they should do, this is going to be the race-winning move. We've got 3 riders from the Dutch team, which is really their bike race to lose here. You know, they've got to work out who are they going to work for. Are they going to attack each other? Are they going to go for someone to win the sprint? What are they going to do?
Well, they do have a host of options. They're going to have to talk to each other here. They're going to have to work something out between them. And the rider at the black is Chantal Black. She's already been on the deck. She crashed earlier on, but managed to infiltrate that move with Hannah Barnes and also with Corinne Rivera. Corinne Rivera, the French woman, just sits as the penultimate rider in that group. 45 seconds it is. Anna van der Breggen is now leading this group down the descent. This is where, in about 500 metres time, they'll pick up that tailwind, which they'll be very, very happy to have before they swing swing left and back into the headwind along the run into the line. So what are your thoughts here, Joe? Do you think the Dutch team should start attacking, or do you think they should ride as a unit, as we see an attack on the left-hand side from Van Vleuten?
I think go for the attacks. Yeah, go for it. Last 8 kilometres of the World Championship road race. Let's see what they've got. Let's see who's going to be the best bike rider here. And Annemiek van Vleuten going on the attack, but everyone straight on her wheel.
Yeah, Annemiek van Vleuten driving hard. She knows they have 3 chances to win this race. So happy, perhaps, to spend a bit of time on the front. Do you think she's here riding for herself, or do you think she's riding for the team and also to try and set things up for Anna van der Breggen? Do you think there's been an agreement amongst this group? Because Garfoot is refusing to work. Unsurprisingly, Nuya Doma is not working either. There's a look over the shoulder here, and it's Chantal Black who goes on the offensive. This is going to force the other riders to chase. This is the thing, when you have such numerical superiority, you do have options. As this little counter move now comes across, containing Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. And it also looks like one of the Italians is in there. It looks like Tatiana Guderzo. So a good group bridging across the gap.
Yeah, Linda Willemsen there in 3rd wheel as well. 2nd wheel, the Danish rider Cecilie Ludwig. So some big name riders here that have just missed out on that move, but they're not giving up yet. 7K to go, and they're going to work together.
Well, it looks like Black has gone well clear here. Big attack by Chantal Black. There will be no response at all, of course, from Annemiek van Vleuten and Anna van der Breggen. It will be left up to the rest of the riders comprising of this lead group. It'll be left to Audrey Cordon-Rago. It'll be left to Hannah Barnes. Katarina Garfoot, interestingly, not going to assist with the pacemaking. And surprisingly for me, no response at all from Katarina Nuya Doma. They're giving this race now to the Dutch. Fascinating stuff here. It looks as if this next group on the road are going to make the junction, because the impetus has completely dropped away from this move now.
It has to. Hannah Barnes riding on the front here. No one else willing to contribute to the chase. Chantal Black getting her head down and carrying on. I think the other riders are banking on the fact that the other Dutch girls might even try and counter again to try and get a 1-2-3. But currently, we've got Corinne Rivera now going.
Corinne Rivera, she's immediately neutralised by the rider from Poland there. Nuya Doma constantly looking around. Hannah Barnes drifts over to the right-hand side. It's almost like we're watching slow motion now, almost like a track sprint in progress. The momentum has completely been lost from this group, but it is advantage the Netherlands. Annemiek van Vleuten just drifts over to the right-hand side now. The Australian rider, Katarina Garfoot, she knows how dangerous it is with these riders on board. Van der Breggen prowls just at the back of this group. It is now 18 seconds from our solo rider out in front, Chantal Black, 27 years of age. She's an absolutely wonderful rouleur, won Gent-Wevelgem last year, as well as the Ronde van Drenthe, indicating that she's good on the flat, good in the wind, very powerfully built, but very aerodynamic as well, cutting through the air supremely.
Yeah, Chantal Black is a brilliant all-rounder. Brilliant ride by her today. She's crashed. She's been in moves. She's been doing everything. She's been chasing other riders, and now she's away on her own. And it seems to be Hannah Barnes taking on at the front of this group, but not many people wanting to help her out here. So they all seem to be happy to settle for silver at the moment.
Well, this is a real cat-and-mouse tactics. And finally, Katarina Nuya Doma of Poland goes to the front. It's a very, very short turn indeed, forcing Hannah Barnes to go straight to the front. This isn't an ideal situation for Barnes or Nuya Doma. But meanwhile, the lack of cohesion in that group behind is reaping dividends for the rider on your screen. There we go, twice winner of the UCI Team Time Trial Championships. She is the current champion of the Netherlands on the road, and she's been given a massive opportunity to take gold in the Women's Elite Road Race Championship. She looks very, very powerful. She's got the wind in her back, scars on her shorts, but she now has real belief because she is disappearing up the road. That is an enormous gap that she's opened up over this elite chasing group of riders.
That is a huge gap, and the Dutch riders won't contribute to the chases. So we now finally seem to have some organisation here. Hannah Barnes, who has been trying to get the chase going already, Audrey Cordon-Rago, Cassia Numa-Doma are working together. The two riders, the Dutch riders, are sat on, which we'd expect, but also Katrin Garford is sat on. She's not doing any work herself either. So the Australian rider, who got bronze in the time trial on Tuesday, isn't contributing to this chase. And the gap's gone up 23 seconds now for Chantal Blaak, with less than 5 kilometres to go.
Well, this is a wonderful move by Chantal Blaak and great team riding by the Netherlands. We said that they came into this race with the strongest team in depth in terms of options, but I wouldn't have expected Chantal Blaak, despite her pedigree, to be the rider that's looking like she may be going into the rainbow jersey. Look at the face, look at her determination as she hits the pavé. She won't mind the pavé. We know she's won on the pavé in the past. She'll take this section, she'll take the applause of the crowd, still pedaling very fluidly, looking extremely strong.
She is extremely strong, and this is a rider who missed out on selection for the Olympic Games last year in Rio, which shows how strong the Dutch team are. You know, they picked their riders, and she wasn't one of those. And I know how gutted she was about that, but brilliant season this year with the Boels-Dolmans team, plenty of wins in team time trials already, and now this could be the biggest win of her career now. And the gap's getting bigger, 27 seconds now, it's saying. 27
seconds, and then a further 22 seconds back to what's left of the peloton. Hannah Barnes of Great Britain. Here is this small group high. There is Corinne Rivera. Just in second wheel.
Yeah, Linda Willemsen on the front there, former world time trial champion, doing some work chasing here, but they seem to have too much work to do now. Doesn't look like they're going to get back to the leaders.
That is, and also the bunches are also picking them up. We just saw Rivera attacking that small group, but they are running out of tarmac now, running out of road. Only 4 kilometres to go for our leader, Chantal Blaak of the Netherlands. What a wonderful ride it is by her. What an absolutely scintillating race this has been. A real rich narrative unfolding on at the streets of Bergen. This is another one of these short little rises that are going to really sap the strength from the legs, which is keeping her form. And certainly she believes, and moving away from the bunch. And another attack from Numa-Doma.
Yeah, she wants to go for this medal now, you know. They've sat around, they've played games, but now she's got on the attack. Hannah Barnes has been doing a lot of work, but now swings over. Cassie Numa-Doma on the attack, and Annemiek van Vleuten chasing her straight away.
Well, Van Vleuten looking extremely strong there. Rago moving over, but Numa-Doma persisting with that attack. Out of the saddle again, so aggressive as soon as the road pitches up. She's got full of flight, but the junction has been made. And Van Vleuten, I think, has neutralised this move, but unfortunately, Hannah Barnes, as a result of that stinging attack, has just been detached from that group. She's got Audrey Cordon-Rago for company. If she can join forces, she may be able to get back in contact, because it's not too far back to the bunch. But after that attack, she swings over. Numa-Doma knows that her chances of winning gold are slowly fading away. Just over 3 kilometres to go in the Elite Women's World Road Race Championships here in Bergen. The sun is setting. It's been a wonderful week of racing and a wonderful day of racing here. And we have one rider out in front. It looks as if she is racing to her first gold medal. Chantal Blaak of the Netherlands, 27 years of age, one previous road win this year, and that was another big one. That was the Dutch road title. And now she rounds that corner into the headwind, just under 3 kilometres to go for our sole leader. And Hannah Barnes now takes to the front. She's ridden an absolutely brilliant race and determined to try and get something for herself.
She is determined to try and get something here. So she's in a position, brilliant position, 2.5K to go at the World Championship road race. Not much cooperation from the group, and she's going for it.
She certainly is. A big attack there, taking the others by surprise, attacking from the back. But the dangerous rider at the back there, number 12, is Anna van der Breggen, the Olympic champion. Barnes persists with her effort on the front, and she's got Annemiek van Vleuten in her slipstream. She needs to take a little bit of a look round, which she does so. She then eases off. She still has a good chance of a medal, but 17 seconds now with 2.2 kilometres to go for our sole leader, Chantal Blaak. Can she hold on to take an absolutely sensational victory here? the Dutch have really used their strength in numbers to their advantage.
They have, and Chantal Black, she's had an incredible race. You know, we saw her hit the deck earlier. You know, she hasn't had an easy ride at all. She doesn't seem to have been a protected rider. She's been going on the attack, covering moves, and here she is in the race-winning position, less than 2 kilometres to go with nearly a 20-second gap.
Well, it won't be long before our leader goes under the Flamme Rouge. What a race it has been, but with 21 seconds, with 1,800 metres to go, it looks as if it is going to be victory for Chantal Black of the Netherlands to take another gold medal for that team. They've taken gold in the women's time trial with Annemiek van Vleuten. They've taken gold in the men's time trial with Tom Dumoulin. What a week it has been for the Netherlands. What a week it has been for Bergen and Norway. Some fantastic, exciting racing. 1.7 kilometres to go for our sole leader, and Hannah Barnes leads the chase behind. Katarina Niewiadoma of Poland is in third wheel. Annemiek van Vleuten is there in third. Garfoot is there as well, and Rago. And then the Olympic champion Anna van der Breggen is last, but it's all about this one woman at the moment.
What a spectacular ride by Chantal Black. You know, she just needs to keep in this area position, keep her head down. You know, just over a kilometre to go to potentially the biggest win of her career ever. And we're seeing not an organised chase here. We keep seeing Hannah Barnes in the front, probably getting a bit frustrated no one else is chasing, but Hannah Barnes is a very good sprinter, so at some point these girls will start to think about the lesser medals, the silvers and the bronzes. You know, no one wants to come over with 4th, 5th, 6th place here.
1 kilometre to go now for Chantal Black of the Netherlands. She has a comfortable 35-second margin. She's got to go through this next chicane, urged on by an appreciative crowd. The sun is setting on this day, and this is a day that will live long in the memory of this young woman on your screen. Now, Chantal Black of the Netherlands is going to be crowned the Women's World Road Race Champion to add to her national title that she won earlier in the year. It's been a dominant display by the squad from the Netherlands. They had the out-and-out favourites, and they certainly have delivered. 500 metres to go now, but she's not giving up. She's not taking anything for granted. She looks behind. All she can see is empty road. She cannot believe this. Absolutely wonderful scenes. What emotions must be coursing through her body at the moment. One last right-hander, and then the glorious sight of the finishing straight will emerge. A rapturous reception by the Norwegian crowd, who have been wonderful here this week. There is the finish. There is Chantal Black of the Netherlands. She attacked with about 6 kilometres to go, using their numerical superiority. She cannot believe it. She's already crashed, but she is going to be crowned World Road Race Champion. Chantal Black does it. She can't believe it, but she's won. Wonderful win there for Chantal Black of the Netherlands.
That was incredible riding by her. I am so pleased for her. And, you know, the Dutch came into this race as the out-and-out favourites. Everyone was looking at them to win the bike race, and they delivered, but with not the rider that everyone's named. I'm incredibly pleased for her.
Well, here we go. It's Van der Breggen. Van Vleuten's on the front as well. Katarina Niewiadoma, who is going to take the other medals going through the centre. It looks like Van Vleuten is on the right-hand side and coming just through the centre there. The Australian Garfoot takes second, just ahead, I think, of Ludwig of Denmark.
That was Didriksen.
Oh,
last
blimey.
year's winner, so I don't think anyone thought she'd be medaling today on this sort of course. So what an incredible ride by Amelie Didriksen to take the bronze.
Well, an amazing ride. We hadn't seen her all day apart from towards the back. But what a ride by Chantal Black. Emotional scenes here on the finishing line. She cannot believe it. She'll be wearing the rainbow stripes for the next 12 months, and of course the gold medal that goes with it. Congratulations all round from her teammates. What a moment for Chantal Black, and what a ride as well.
What an incredible ride. This is such a special moment for her. Coming to the race, it looked like the Dutch team probably had a bit of a free rein to an extent. They almost had, their team was almost too strong, that no one really quite knew who they were going to work for. And that tactic of having that strength in depth, having those numbers, different riders that can attack, you know, worked out perfectly for them. Chantal Black was in that breakaway. The big favourites came up and they were all attacking. She was the one that got away. Nobody chased, nobody got organised, and she took that opportunity. She's won the biggest bike race of her career.
You are certainly right. Wonderful win by Chantal Black. Garfoot second, Didriksen third. There is your newly crowned World Road Race Champion, Chantal Blaak being hugged by the Olympic road race champion, Anna van der Breggen. Both teammates, of course, at Boels Dolmans, and teammates in the Dutch squad. And there is Van Vleuten, the time trial champion. So they've doubled up, and it wasn't necessarily the person we thought it would be. But what a ride. On the attack, on the deck, crashed as well. Some real drama in this race. And again, a wonderful spectacle. The Hayley Simmons there, she's ridden a fantastic race, as have the rest of the Great Britain team. She crosses the line, only a couple of minutes adrift. So Chantal Blaak takes the world title ahead of Katrin Garford, Didriksen in third. But this is the moment that Chantal Blaak became world road race champion. Battle-scarred, but champion of the world. This is what it means to her and the rest of the Dutch team, who've had a remarkable World Championships here in Bergen. Tears rolling down her face. But it will be worthwhile. She'll get the gold medal and the rainbow bands, which she'll wear with pride for the next 12 months. And we'll look back on this moment as the pinnacle of her career so far. So the Netherlands dominating the road events, the senior road events in Bergen. But what a race, Joe, it has been. A wonderful advertisement, I think, for women's cycling and cycling in general. There is the confirmation. Your new world champion, Chantal Blaak of the Netherlands. Katrin Garford takes the silver. Last year's winner, stealing the bronze for Denmark, Amelie Didriksen. Van Vleuten taking fourth, Nuria Doma fifth, Majerus sixth, Andersen in seventh, Van der Breggen in eighth place. And then in ninth, Pauline and Elena Cecchini. Well, there we go. One of the riders from Colombia high-fiving all the way down the finishing straight. I think that, Joe, is just an example of how wonderful and essentially what a celebration of cycling this World Championships has been. Well, that is Bergen, the scene of some spectacular racing, and that really was something to savour. So many breaks at the back end of the race, you know, so many different tactical permutations playing out, but a superb display of strength and also tactical nous there by Chantal Blaak to take the world title.
It was so fabulous to see her win. She wasn't a rider a lot of people would have named beforehand as being the favourite, simply because she's in a squad of so many strong riders. But in her own right, she is an incredible bike racer, won many races in her career. And I am so pleased to see her take the win today after such an epic race for her. Crashes, being in, well, one crash, being in a break, chasing other riders, you know, really active throughout the race. And then to see her take the win, absolutely spectacular, really committed to that attack on those last few kilometres, and a brilliant solo win third where she could really lap up that moment.
Yeah, I think winning solo, winning the world title in any fashion is obviously wonderful, but to win it and to actually soak up those few last metres, see that finishing straight opening out in front of you, knowing you're going to become world champion, it really is something to savour. And a great ride by Hannah Barnes. Looking back down through the results, she finished a very fine 14th, just missed out on a top 10 spot, but that, I think, will give the British team and Hannah Barnes some real hope for the future, as we see some of the other riders just coming through, fighting gamely for every single place. I think that just shows what the World Championships really means to every single rider in this field, especially the way that Bergen has opened its arms to the championships this year.
It does, you know, riders sprinting for some minor places there. It shows how much it means to them, and it has been a great race today. I've been really impressed with the GB riders. That's quite a young team, with Lizzie Dyden perhaps not on her best form, as she said herself, but they've ridden really well, really maturely all race.
When you cross the line,
well, Chantal Blaak is the new road race champion of the world. Garford second, Didriksen in third. Well, there are the crowds assembled in the centre of Bergen, awaiting the prize-giving ceremony, and that will be a real moment to savour for Chantal Blaak, and you've been world champion in the past on the track. What's it like to wear those bands? As we hear, from
the shirt was ripped, you crashed during the race, you're the world champion. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it. Everything happens in the race. And when I crashed, actually it took pretty long, and I also was in a lot of pain on that moment, and I thought my race is over. But yeah, I thought, yeah, maybe I can come back and then we see what I can do. But it was not really the plan that I should win the race. I just want to make the best as possible for the team, and yeah, and then I came in a good break, so that was a good thing because then I could come over.